I did ask her. It's quite
Or they don't have a.
Yeah. Well. You've spoken to Missy or?
I have not. And then you look at Tyler. It does run.
All right, I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the Yampa White Green Basin Roundtable. This is Wednesday, March 12th, 2025. We're in the CNCC campus here in Craig, Colorado. It's now 6:01. My name is Ken Brenner. I'm the Yampa Vice Chair. Our chair is joining us remotely and asked me to fill in for him while he's it's hard to chair meetings when you're not in the room. So thank you. If you'll bear with me, please, and we'll go through today's agenda. I believe our first item is to make sure we do an introduction of all of our members. So why don't we start down here with Brian?
Brian Romick, Water Resources.
Miranda Cowchick, Moss County.
Thank you.
Eamon O'Toole, Little Snake River. I'm about Frank Alcone, the domestic water provider rep.
Bill Badaraka, at large member.
Jeff Rodriguez with the CWCB.
At Weissmiller with CWCB.
Sean Mulder with Yellow Jacket Water Conservancy District in Meaford.
Kelly Switchfield, House and Senate.
Greg Peterson with Colorado Ag Water Alliance.
I'm Ryan Messenger with YWG. I'm just here for a great presentation.
Julie Baxter, City of Steamboat Springs, I'm the Route County Municipality Rep. Dorothy Brown, I'm the Industrial Rep. I work for First State Generation.
I'm Tim Solomon with the Yampa Valley Sustainability Council, and I'm the environmental rep.
Chris Collins, I'm the at large and rancher from the White River Valley. Scott Kalman, Rock County, and sitting in for Sunday Macy's.
Patrick Stango, Community Agricultural Alliance.
Sally Caribou, PEPO Liaison.
Liz Chandler with the White River Conservation. I'm Kristen Skarsky. I'm the reporter for the roundtable.
Thomas Kennedy, I'm with Tri-State Generation Transmission, and since Jackie's here, I have no responsibilities whatsoever.
Thank you for being here and welcome. Why don't we go through our online participants? I see we're up to 14 now.
That's Steve McMahon.
Steve, you want to say hello?
Hi, Steve Hinkmar, Yampa White Green Chair and Moffat County Municipality Rep.
Ryan Bailey.
Yeah, Ryan Bailey, professor at Colorado State University, here to give a presentation later on. Great to be here.
Alden Vandenbrink.
Hey, that's me, Al Vandenbrink, Rio Blanco Water Conservancy District representative. I have one more base roundtable member here with me. I'll let him introduce himself.
Mario Sullivan, Rio Blanco County Municipal Representative.
Aaron Light. Please go ahead. We'll come back to Doug Monger. We've got Jenny Princeton.
Thanks, Sally. I'm just here as a guest to listen in and hear what's going on. I'm with Friends of the Yampa.
Michelle Mahatsky.
Hi there, I'm the water education coordinator with Yempatika and representing Yempatika.
Rebecca Reesmore.
Hi all, Rebecca Breezemore, Colorado River District.
We have Robert Sataka.
Hi, everybody. Robert Sakata, Colorado Department of Ag Water Policy Advisor.
We got that. We've got Vanessa Trout. Okay, and Jayla Poppleton.
Hi all, I'm Jayla. I'm the Resilient Water and Watersheds Director at the Yampa Valley Sustainability Council. Brand new to this group, so thanks for having me, and I'm excited to get to meet those of you who I haven't met yet.
Anybody else I missed?
Try to stay real late with March.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. I want you guys just to find packets around, all write your names on there so I can get them for the minutes.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right, well, thanks everybody for being here tonight. I want to take just a moment and acknowledge that we have the new section chief for planning for the Colorado Water Conservation Board. This was announced after our last meeting in January. Kat's taken over to try to fill in for where Russ Sands left off, and she's off to a great start, and we're really thrilled to have you all the way up here in Northwest Colorado. Thank you for making the trip. And she brought along our partner in crime, Jeff Rodriguez. Jeff, we really appreciate you guys making the effort. This is not nearby.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, happy to be here.
Do you have anything else you'd like to say right now?
Yeah, just wanted to come up and say hello and see everybody face to face. So yeah, I'll let Jeff give his update on, maybe say a few words at that point.
Super. We'll look forward to that. And Robert Sakata, thank you, Robert. I don't believe there's a meeting in the state of Colorado that has water in it that you haven't been attending, so thank you for your persistence. All right, so we have an agenda. I think Sally has that up on the board. Are there any corrections, additions, deletions, or changes to that? I think we come up with anything. If there are no changes, then I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Alpha moves to approve the agenda as presented.
Alpha.
Second.
Sullivan, second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? Great. Okay, so we have an agenda. Our next item on the agenda is the review and approval of our January 8th minutes. And we have those to show, they're in your packet. There's packets back here in the back if you haven't seen them already. Here are the draft minutes.
The minutes are up on.
Okay, here's your minutes. Sally goes to the trouble of making sure that all of these are completed and up on the webpage well in advance of the meeting, so. And they're not particularly onerous to review, so this is a good way to try to make sure you take a few minutes. Never hurts to read through the minutes. Just to make sure you remember what we did 2 months ago. That was 2 months ago. I need a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So moved.
All right, we have O'Toole, motion.
Second.
Second. From Baxter. Any other comments, changes, deletions? All in favor, say aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? Okay. We're now ready for public comment. Public comment on any item not on tonight's agenda. We ask that you hold this for 3 minutes. Public comment.
Can I have I think a public comment
Please, Julie.
appropriate?
Yes, this would be
Yeah.
good.
Thanks, you all. So Julie Baxter, again, I work for the city of Steamboat Springs, and the roundtable, provided a letter of support for the city's application for the Yampa River Walton Creek Confluence Restoration Project. Our application to the reclamation, environmental drought, ecosystem resiliency, the B2E funds. And just to quickly, just a reminder, this project, with the main objective, is to address the, northern pike spawning habitat that's left from remnants of gravel mining 40, 50 years ago. It's one of the most significant sources of spawning habitat in the whole Yampa River system. So the most expensive part, the main part of the project is to get rid of that habitat. But we also have a lot of other great benefits, in that will help with floodplain restoration, floodplain connection, wetlands restoration, water quality, groundwater recharge, flood mitigation for the city. A lot of great benefits from Steamboat all the way, down through, to Dinosaur. And we worked with a lot of stakeholders on this. And we were awarded funding from the CWCB, and then we're selected for the B2E funding as well, which was super exciting. But now, as many of you know, that funding is frozen. So that's affecting lots of projects in our upper basin states in Wyoming and Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, the Shoshone, $40 million for the Shoshone, the upper headwaters of the Colorado project, that it's also in basin, the Little Snake. And so I've been trying to think about, how the city can advocate for the release of these funds. And we are represented by Congressman Neguse, who's a Democrat. We have 2 Democratic senators. So we're sort of looking at, well, how can our regional partners maybe that are in different districts help us advocate for this? And so I reached out to Steve, who reached out to Jeff in the CWCB and said, is it appropriate for the roundtable to consider like a letter to Representative Hurd, who represents Moffett and Rio Blanco counties to support these projects. And we thought it's not really appropriate for the roundtable, but that individual members and their organizations could consider a letter to Representative Hurd to support the release of these funds. And so I've drafted a letter. It was actually specific to the Yampa River project, but I could modify it to also include the other project in our basin, the headwaters of Colorado, if we wanted to include it for both. And so it would just be a sample that you could consider. I know we all probably have some different perspectives on what's happening in Washington right now, but if you think this project, some of the other ones in the B2E funding are good for Northwest Colorado and for the Yampa, I hope you consider potentially writing a letter to support the release of these funds so we can get these projects on the ground.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks for that public comment. We did discuss this at the executive committee as well. So for both reasons, just that I think it leaves the Colorado Water Conservation Board a little uneasy having us weigh in on political issues like this. And just logistically, many of you represent organizations that you would need to go and make sure that they were comfortable with the document before you brought it back here. And besides, there's also the Shoshone and the headwaters, and we have close to $100 million worth of projects that we're talking about. So I think that as long as everybody's comfortable with that, we just ask that you consider some action with your organization or membership that you represent and use that corridor to comment that these are worthwhile projects here in the Colorado River, and you hope the Bureau of Reclamation can release the funds as soon as possible. You know, they're gonna have to go, they still have to, you know, there's been some nominations, but these people have to be confirmed. They have to start their job and learn exactly what it is they're gonna do. So we're probably 60, 90 days away from even getting a chance to find out whether or not these funds are released. So it's important, but maybe not quite as urgent as we would like it to be.
Would it be okay then for the letter for Sally or Steve to email out a sample letter?
Does anybody have a problem with Sally sending out a draft letter of support that you can use as a template? Okay, then we'll do that. We'll send out that. And we'll remind the members that there's at least those three major projects that, not to mention a lot of other worthy projects.
Also just add, this is a common discussion happening at other roundtables across the state. There's a lot of projects that have federal funding attached. CWCB is working closely with our federal partners to track the funding impacts and making sure that CWCB funds don't just go idle while federal matches, you know, kind of in the wind. And if you wanted to send, you know, that template letter and attach the letter of support from the roundtable from the original grant application, I think that is a good idea. That's some of the direction I got from the CWCB leadership. The other thing I wanted to say is this came up at another roundtable meeting and someone from Senator Bennett's office was there. And she was saying, sending them to your representatives and advocating for projects is a good idea, but really this is an executive branch issue. And so, you know, contacting the Department of Interior and those folks that are actually controlling the funds is another way to go about that. But similar, you know, process and things like that. But if you wanted to send them directly to, you know, the Department of Interior and things like that, that would be advisable.
Just to point out, there are other funds, water smart funds are also on hold, which has the we're waiting on matching fund to a big CWCB grant for wildfire ready watershed that's dependent on a water smart grant. So I don't know how we bundle all this stuff.
Yeah, and yeah, those are the funds that we are particularly tracking pretty closely. You know, FEMA funding, some of the ARPA and bill funding as well, because some CWCB programs are directly funded through those funding efforts, like our federal technical assistance program. We do some floodplain mapping from FEMA with FEMA dollars. So we're tracking those, Water Smart, B2E, B2E2, B2W, you know, IRA funding, funding for the Upper Rio Grande and Upper Colorado River Division as well. So monitoring it pretty closely. Things are changing pretty rapidly. Yeah, so we're trying.
Any other public comment? Public comment on any item not on the agenda tonight? Sally, you see anything? Seeing none, I'm gonna close public comment. Jeff, we're gonna turn it right back over to you. I'm gonna hand out some stuff to comment to you.
Hand out some stuff that's pertinent to whatever I'm gonna say. Okay, I was gonna say, I haven't seen these materials yet.
They're just not.
You're just,
Do you want me to start?
please.
Director Brown?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. So just some kind of quick updates for you all. I'm gonna start. Sharing my screen. Can you open it up for me to share my screen?
Yes, you bet.
So while that's happening, maybe I'll start with just some kind of general updates. The first thing on my list is the Diane Hoppy Scholarship. For those of you that don't know, this is a scholarship opportunity that CWCB offers for a one-year scholarship for a Colorado high school senior or college freshman interested in Western water issues and planning to attend a public college or university in Colorado. The application period is open right now until April 1st. So if you know anyone that sort of fits that bill, send the information their way. There could be some money in it for them. I also wanted to mention the agriculture emergency drought program. So this is a program that provides up to $1 million annually for the program. In the form of loans or grants for emergency drought-related water augmentation purposes to agricultural water users in Colorado. So eligible entities are augmentation companies, ditch companies, conservancy districts, conservation districts. The caveat being that they have to be within counties pursuant to federal and state law where an emergency drought designation or disaster emergency has been proclaimed. The deadline for applications for these funds is April 15th. If you have any questions about, do I qualify or want to submit an application, reach out to Nora Flynn on CWCD staff. She manages that program. I've mentioned the last couple meeting cycles, some CWCB reports that have been published. That is the water plan progress report, the 10 strategies to protect irrigated agriculture, and then the photovoltaics report, as well as the CWCB guide. So I just wanted to remind you that those are out there. If you haven't taken a look at them, Ken's got a couple copies there. And just reminded me that I forgot to bring some copies with me.
What the hell?
Thanks, Ken. That's what it looks like. If you want a copy, I have some. I will get them to you. Just catch me, before I leave tonight. And I'll make sure to get some of those your way. And
And
then
strategies to protect irrigated agriculture. That might be of interest to some of these members.
is that online? Yes, it is online. I will drop some links in the chat here when I'm done. Al, I see your chat. I'll drop those links with some others here in a second. I also wanted to mention a couple forthcoming CWCB reports. One of them is a collaborative water sharing agreement report. This is an update to a report that the ATM report that we published previously. So a lot of great information there. It kind of goes hand in hand with that 10 strategies to protect irrigated agriculture report. Most of these reports are culminations of water plan agency actions. The other one being what we're calling the state of the science for turf replacement, which is really a culmination of 2 years of work that Jenna Batson's been doing, looking at outdoor water conservation, and agency action 1.7, which included the Urban Landscape Conservation Task Force, report on the potential water savings from turf replacement efforts in Colorado, some mapping efforts as well, or spatial analysis efforts. And included in that report, it's a pretty meaty document, but included in that is a do-it-yourself guide for turf replacement. So, which is really just kind of best practices for folks who are wanting to do some landscape transformation on their own. And then the last thing I wanted to share here is this. Can you get it up on the screen? Okay. All right, so we are, Emily Adrid is the water planning and climate impact specialist. She couldn't be here tonight, so I'm pinch hitting for her, but I just wanted to mention the climate and water workshops that CWCB is putting on. These are part of Agency Action 4.5, which directs the CWCB to convene 2 water and climate workshops that ultimately support the forthcoming climate impacts report, which is a collaborative effort between CWCB and Colorado State University. That report is really meant to build on the 2024 Climate Change in Colorado report that we talked about over the last year or so. But really focusing on how key climate hazards affect water resources in Colorado and how local action has affected future resilience. The audience for these, one thing I wanted to mention here is that the workshop is really intended to be just that, a working session, and will include some presentations from multiple state agencies, like DOLA, CWCB, folks like that, CDA, I think. And then it will also include an interactive like exercise or simulation, looking at future drought conditions and things like that. But the audience for this is local water industry professionals, local climate resilience professionals, and particularly those organizations with community-oriented kind of missions that are really geared towards those folks who are disproportionately impacted by climate change impacts. So the first workshop is April 3rd in Pueblo. And then the second one is April 23rd in Grand Junction in Clifton, right? In Clifton, at the Clifton Community Center. Both 1 to 5, they're free to attend. We do ask that you register because food and things like that is easier. Right now they are in person only, but you can scan that QR code right there on the screen if you'd like to register to attend. I think that's all I have to say. Do you want to add anything to that?
Is this the same workshop twice?
Yes,
Okay, so
just sort of spread across the state, to make it easier for West Slope folks to get to Clifton and East Slope folks to get to Pueblo, sort of central meeting locations for this big state. That's over 104 square miles. Somebody ought to go to that, yeah. Maybe more than one.
sounds like me.
Do you think you might add a virtual option to either, well,
That would
I
be
guess
great.
specifically the April 3rd workshop, the Steep Route County's spring break is actually during the 23rd one. So just if it would be possible or a recording.
Yeah, we definitely will have a recording. We've talked about adding a virtual option, but because there's a pretty long interactive exercise, it's just trying to figure out how to make that work. So we'll consider that, but we'll have a recording available.
Jeff, you have anything else?
I'm
sure you do.
Assuming you're gonna cover new
Yes.
board members.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I am. Mhm.
Well, we have,
I'll kick it over to Director Brown.
well, before we do that, we just want to shout out that you guys are doing a great job and we appreciate all the new materials that you're sharing and new enthusiasm and energy with we have a new section chief, but we also have a new director of the Water Conservation Board with Warren Riss. And Becky Mitchell has taken over as chair of the IBCC. So there's new energy in there and it shows. We're making some good progress. So turn it over to Jackie. Colorado Water Conservation Boards itself has done a great job.
So my big news, did Mike Hamlin join online by any chance? I don't think so. He probably would have gotten on mute. So Mike was appointed by the Senate, confirmed by the Senate last Thursday, and is now the director. No one needs to call me Director Brown, not that you ever did, but certainly not any longer. So that's the big news. I know Mike resigns from a couple boards and is really excited about this opportunity. So his first board meeting will be in Greeley next week. And I guess the only thing I was hoping Mike would be here, but one little plug is if you have things that you would like to share statewide, to send Mike an email with photos or projects, anything that you want to kind of share with him for his director's report. Might make it easier to put those together. I wish I would have thought of it when I was there, so I was gonna offer that to him, and yeah. He'll give a director's report on the second day of every board meeting, and it's always good to have photographs if there's something going on that you want to share, so. then just with regard to business that might, might not be, well, now he's probably in the know because he's reading his board packet, which is probably why he's not here tonight. Is that there are, 3 in-stream flows of note that will be before the board next week. 2 in Vermilion Creek, which are moving forward, slated to move forward, and then 1 in Milk Creek that I think are of interest in general. I know that T. Wright has been following the one in Vermilion, so this is not a mystery. I think we talked about this in January, but I just, as far as takeaways from the last board meeting, that's really what's going on. There's a great presentation about the water plan. You guys know how to find those materials, so I think everything else has been covered, and just welcome to Kat, and certainly would just give a plug that I don't think you're filling anyone's shoes. I think you're an excellent candidate, and new leadership position. You can hold your own. You've shown that over the years, and so it's a well-deserved position for you. Yeah, actually had a conversation about CWCB hiring within, and the board never has anything to do with hiring except for director risk. But I think I just would put forward that our staff works so hard at the CWCB, and it is kind of a no-brainer to allow, and any corporation, tri-state included, people that can move up the ladder because they have shown that they've done the work and understand the bureaucracies, make them extra valuable. And so, I always think that that's a really exciting thing when you can move your employees up the ladder, no matter where you are. So, congratulations.
Yeah, I meant to give Kat some of my time to just introduce herself, so I'll just bring it back. Back to that real quick, and then I'll take questions. Or we'll take questions.
Well, I don't have too much to say. I just wanted, like I said, to come up and meet a lot of you face to face for the first time. I have been at CWCB for about 5 years now. I was the deputy section chief for most of that time, working with Russ really closely, and feels long ago and far away now, but I was on a lot of these calls during the 5th development a few years back now. So I've been kind of tracking what's going on, but I haven't been up here. So it's really good to be here.
Welcome and congratulations. All right. Jackie, if you don't have anything else,
Questions?
questions for Jeff?
On information at your rapid fire, so.
Jeff, can you provide an update, if anything, on the statewide account as far as fully awarded grants? Is that still the case? Anything change there?
No, nothing's changed there. We expect the statewide account to be fully allocated after the board meeting next week. If anything changes, I'll let you know, but as far as I know, all those projects are moving forward.
Thank you.
In the future of WSRF?
Still the same as it was weeks ago. The budget situation's changing pretty rapidly. CWCB leadership and staff is working really hard to, save as much funding for water projects as we can. It's going through the process. JBC is sort of still trying to tackle the budget situation and things like that. What I knew to be true yesterday changed this morning, so I'll just leave it at that. But the future of WSRF, the basin accounts, remains the same, 300,000 annual allocation to those roundtables who are below the $750,000 cap. We still have 3 years of funding in reserve just in case, things go really south really fast, but as far as I know, none of that's being clawed back.
Good. Other questions? So you see anything online? Thank you for that update. Continue doing a great job for us. We much appreciate it.
Ken,
Sorry,
I'm a little slow sometimes, so it takes a little bit.
No, go
So
ahead.
any chance where we talk about the 3 years of funding in reserve, any chance of that getting swept by the state?
Not right now, they haven't even really, considered that. Most of what I understand to be true still is, it's still interest earned on those accounts that they're talking about, using to balance the statewide budget. So all that funding is secured for now. It's mostly, future upside that is being, swept, which, has impacts to WSRF for sure, especially, hoping that there would be another special infusion like there was in 2022. I think, we're still hoping for that, but the budget situation is making that less and less likely. That being said, when we were projecting out in 2019, we were expecting 0 severance tax for 3 years, and we got that massive infusion in 2022. So things changed pretty quickly, but so far, yeah, still a lot to be seen. The budget situation will get sorted out with the long bill.
How close is the long bill?
It's a good question. It sort of hinges on the March economic forecast, which is slated to come out on Monday. So there's still a lot up in the air waiting for that. So we expect the long bill to be introduced sometime in late March.
Okay, great, thank you. There's no other questions? All right, we'll move on to a couple of action items. First one is the grant committee update. Great.
Thanks, Ken. Good segue, Jeff, into our grants committee update. The good news is that this Basin Roundtable still has money in their local account to grant out. So if you want to scroll up, Sally, just a quick overview of the agenda for tonight. I'm going to give just a brief update on the status of where we stand from a financial standpoint, and then we're going to hear one grant presentation from Ryan, who introduced himself earlier for the Yampa River Forest Restoration Project. And then I just have a few updates about some future grants that are in the pipeline for the next, in the fourth cycle, if you will. If you want to scroll up to the next one, the next slide. That's kind of hard to see, and I'll just go through this pretty quickly. We started the 2025 cycle with about $710,000 in our local account. We, as a grants committee, recommended a $550,000 annual spend, which this Basin Roundtable approved. To date, if you include the grant tonight, which they're asking for about $49,000, we will have spent about $240,000. That includes tonight's grant. These grants are still yet to be approved by the CWCB board. But the bottom line is, to Jeff's earlier point, we're very close to getting to that $450,000 threshold. And we're below, and then we get that full $300,000 for next cycle, if you will. And we've got a few grants, as I said earlier, that are in the pipeline that will most likely push us to spend more to get that $300,000 for 2026. If you recall, we had no applications in the second cycle. This is our third cycle. We have one application. And we may see 3, possibly 4 for the fourth cycle. That's coming up here real soon. So that's a quick update on the financial. Right now, as I said, if everything is approved, we would have about $469,000 in our account for this next cycle. So I'll stop there. Is there any questions on the financial part of this? Okay, hearing that, I'll move on. So, we're gonna hear a presentation tonight from Ryan, and it's the Yampa River Forest Restoration Project. Just to kind of remind everyone of kind of the protocol on these grants, we give Ryan about 7 or 8 minutes, not 9 or not 5, just 7 or 8. And then we move to questions and answers. And hopefully we'll be done in about 15 minutes. At that point, I turn it over to Ken, who is the acting chair tonight, to ask for a motion and approval. We are, as a grant committee, recommending approval of this grant. So in the packet of materials, there was a bunch of information. There were draft minutes from the last grants meeting, which was February 12th. The grant applications for Ryan's presentation were in there. There's a grant summary document that kind of gives the highlights of the actual grant. And then there was also 4 letters of support for Ryan's project. And I shouldn't say it's Ryan's project. He works for the Yampa Valley Sustainability Council, and that's who he's representing tonight. So with that said, I'll let Sally kind of run the slides and turn it over to Ryan for his presentation.
Great, thanks, Frank. Sure. I timed it to 7 minutes, 20 seconds, so we'll see how we fall. Well, thank you all for having me here to present on the Yampa River Forest Restoration Project. As Frank said, my name is Ryan Messenger. I'm the Natural Climate Solutions Project Manager for Yampa Valley Sustainability Council. So this is a riparian buffer restoration project that will target 7 sites on the Yampa River. 6 are located at Chuck Lewis State Wildlife Area upstream of Steamboat Springs. And then 1 additional site located on a parcel owned by Mount Warren Water and Sanitation District. All of these sites will have been previously restored using bank stabilization techniques aimed at mitigating erosion. All sites together will add up to about 2,000 feet of riparian forest that will be restored along the river. To do that, we'll plant about 1,000 trees, mostly narrowleaf cottonwoods and mountain alder. In addition, we'll also be planting willow stakes harvested from local willow source on the property. This will be a community tree planting event. YWG will be utilizing community volunteers via our annual retree event. Since 2019, YWG has planted over 5,500 trees in riparian areas along 2.5 miles of stream bank, which constitutes about 19 acres of restored riparian area. And we've engaged nearly 1,000 community members in the process. So looking at tasks and timelines, we're missing, oh, that's okay. Project planning will begin in June of this year. So that includes meeting with landowners, conducting site visits, and then finalizing our planting plan. During that time, we will also order our tree seedlings from our partner nursery, One Canopy. It's a nonprofit nursery located on the Front Range. They harvested cottonwood cuttings and seeds from alder trees. The cottonwood cuttings came from Milner. The alder trees came from Chuck Lewis. So they're all local genotype, which is really beneficial for this project. Planting implementation will take place in 2025 and 2026, and will start in September of each year. So this includes drilling the holes, getting supplies and equipment out to the site, and then planting with the volunteers. That also includes caging the trees, which will protect them from beaver and browsing, and then also setting up irrigation. Maintenance and monitoring will begin in June of next year, so following our first planting, and will run for 3 years after that. So as part of maintenance, we irrigate the trees for 3 years to make sure that their roots can access the groundwater and take care of themselves. And then we'll also trim back any encroaching vegetation to make sure that there's no competition for resources there. And then monitoring, we're looking specifically for mortality amongst our trees. And then if there is mortality, trying to understand what site conditions might exist that could be causing that. We are partnering with Mount Warner Water, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and the City of Steamboat Springs on this project. So project goals. We'll start here with improving water quality, decreasing water temperatures by increasing shade canopy. As we all know, rising river temperatures is a major concern for the Upper River. So this project will, through large riparian trees planted, help mitigate those rising temperatures. And then riparian areas will also help filter non-point pollution, such as sediment and nutrients from the river. We'll be increasing natural water storage in the Yampa Basin. Riparian areas act as natural reservoirs, which will maintain base flows. We'll also be improving recreational opportunities. Chocolate State Wildlife area is a very popular spot for fishing and waterfowl hunting. And this project, through the restoration of riparian areas, will restore aquatic species habitat. And then we'll also be educating the public on river health issues at those retreat events that I mentioned, as well as explaining, some of the actions that we can take to help mitigate some of those issues. That's all right. This project also addresses some goals laid out in the basin implementation plan. Goal number 6, to quantify and protect environmental and recreational water uses. This plan specifically laid out a near-term focus to implement restoration activities and maintain those restored habitats. Goal number 7, maintain and consider the existing natural range of water quality, as I mentioned, mitigating rising river temperatures, and filtering out nutrients and sediment. And then also addressing some HEPA goals, again, through those retreat events and engaging with the community and explaining about some of the water quality issues that the river is facing. So total project cost, we're looking at about $97,000. We are asking for $48,933 from this basin roundtable. About $4,600 of that will go towards project planning, $25,000 to planting implementation, and just a little less than $19,000 for maintenance and monitoring. We are additionally looking for about $48,000 in match, which includes $21,000 from other grants that we are pursuing, including the Yampa River Fund, Upper Yampa Water Conservancy District, and others. And then an additional $27,000 in in-kind contributions from those volunteer hours at the retreat events. So that's all I have. I appreciate you all listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Yeah.
If we have a ground here this year and go into a secondary one next year, will you postpone planting? I mean, have you considered, like, yes, this is a timeline, but if the conditions are not right for how we know trees thrive, like putting trees in a multi-drought situation would probably be bad. Is there like a plan B, or would you guys consider that, to not just force it because the project is scheduled in that way?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and Tim, I might get you back up on this one as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've been fortunate since we've been running this program not to have had, even though there were some dry years there. I think we would definitely consider it if that was the conditions, particularly if we were not going to be able to have supplemental irrigation in the summer months too, which can help them get through that. But I think, yes, if the roundtable is open to that, we consider postponing to focus on keeping the trees we already have planted in the line.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Other questions? Anyone online?
Yeah, Ken, this is Andy Rossi. You have time for a question there? Yeah, thank you. Hey, I asked during the grant committee review process of the project, there's some concerns always with maintenance on planting projects, and I would ask, Ryan, can you just go over some of your information that you relayed to me during that conversation about long-term maintenance and what sort of overall efforts it's going to take, a little bit to dovetail on Jackie's comment, what's going to take to keep these things alive in the long term? Thank you.
Sure. So like I mentioned, the trees do need to be irrigated for a few years to make sure that their roots can get deep enough that they're accessing their own water, so that we no longer need to take care of them. This year we will be taking a few trees that we planted a few years ago off of their irrigation. So we are kind of in this long step-by-step process of analyzing where the trees are at, seeing if they're willing, able to take care of themselves, and then moving on. I will say with this project in particular, because we're working on restored banks, there's some loose dirt there. That moisture can get wicked up pretty nicely from the river, so it's a lot easier to plant trees there. Also, those trees that were planted closer down, we've noticed doing these projects in the past that even at the bottom of those water holes, you'll find some water even in September, October. So we're pretty confident that these trees will take nicely, and irrigation shouldn't have to go longer than just those few years. And then also mentioned having to go out and weed, making sure that there's no encroaching grasses. Reed canary grass is a concern at Chuck Lewis. And we've spoken with Billy Atkinson, the fish biologist, and now the habitat restoration coordinator in Colorado. We've discussed some plans to make sure that we can get ahead of that and not have our trees succumb to some of those encroaching grasses. Andy, did I answer? Would you like some more information?
No, that was great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure thing. I'll also mention quickly, because I had in my notes from that last grant meeting, just looking at our success rate over the years. The sites that we've been planting generally fall within a 40%, 40 to 60% mortality rate. We do overplant to make sure that we have enough trees in the ground that when we do get some of those bigger mortality rates, that we still have a robust riparian forest. We even have some sites that are up to 80–90%, so including one just downstream of where we're working.
Another question from Alderman Vanderbrink.
Hey, thank you. Question, I see this is being done. We got 6 sites at the Chuck Lewis State Wildlife Area. Is the Colorado CPW participating in this other than probably as a supporter? Is there financial contributions coming from the state?
They do not have this project. There's no cash contributions coming in from CPW. However, there is in-kind contributions and labor and machinery. So when we've worked with them in the past, and they've kind of given this commitment of support that they will help bring in their skid steer, help drill holes, help carry equipment where needed. We've used their side-by-sides in the past to get equipment out there before. So we expect a similar level of commitment on their end.
Okay, I have one more follow-up question, if I may, please. And maybe you said it and I missed it because on my remote end over here. Is this a community project, or who's doing the planting? Is it a professional organization? I'm sorry, I missed that.
No, that's okay. This is a community planting event. So YWG puts on annual, they're called retree events. So we have hundreds of volunteers from the surrounding communities come out, help plant the trees, and then also learn about, why we're planting the trees, why it's important, and how it's benefiting the river.
Okay.
Other questions? Anybody here? Online?
This is Al again. I guess for 1,000 trees for $97,000, that's an expensive tree planting. And I know we've planted thousands of trees over here too, and we've yet to break $10,000. So I don't know if your trees are higher quality or something, but boy, that seems awful expensive for 1,000 trees.
Yeah, so you'll notice that 27,000 of that is in-kind contribution. So volunteers are valued at about $33.50 per hour. I was thinking about becoming a full-time volunteer. That's what they're doing. And then we do spend extra money on fencing and irrigation to make sure that our trees do survive. Like I said, that caging can protect them against beavers and browsing when they're young and still in their cage. We also have small plastic caging that we put around the base to protect against voles. We found that that tends to be our #1 enemy, especially in the wintertime and hard winters. They'll circle the the base of the trees and cut off all nutrients and water, and those trees will just die. So we put in some extra effort to make sure that, trees that we put in are gonna last and, try to, get above that 50% mortality rate, and make sure that we have a robust forest, and then also the irrigation.
And what we should point out is that includes, staff time for taking care of them for the next 3 years. And the trees themselves in the budget are $4.50 a piece. Is that right?
$2.
$2 a piece. Yeah, so we're only paying $2,000 for the trees.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Are we ready to have a motion? Sally, you got a motion that you can put up for us?
And just, if I might just quickly, the ask is less than $50,000, so procedurally, this grant can be approved by the CWCB director without prior board authorization, so I want everyone to know that. And I am going to recuse myself. Of course, I'm the general manager of Mellow Water. We're not doing anything but letting them plant trees on our land, but I think I still recuse myself.
I will recuse as well.
All right, so let the record show that both Sullivan and Alphone have recused themselves. And Baxter,
Oh, Jack,
yeah,
Julie.
those three recusals. Okay, we see the motion up on the board, and who's brave? Right, here we go.
I'll make a motion that what do we say, recommend approval of the grant request for $48,933 of the Yampa White Green Basin Roundtable WSRF funds.
Motion.
Second from Rossi.
Second from Rossi. Any other discussion?
I have discussion, so will that include when you do your application, I have not read your application, that there can be some flexibility for the maintenance aspect of this to not plan during times of. I mean, I'm not telling you to do that, but I'm just making sure that we either agree that that's a good idea or we don't.
Yeah, I understand the concern. Tim, I think we both agree that we can put that into the application to the CWCB and have that in there that will, judge. Since we're not planning until September, October, we should know by then, what kind of year that we're in. I don't know that if we want to look for some kind of a threshold that we need to pass, but just kind of using our best judgment. Yeah.
Just so that they don't restrict you, not that we're restricting.
Sure.
But that they don't say, you need to have the money spent by, whatever then the fiscal year that you're writing it, so that you have to give yourself some leeway if you need it.
Okay, I appreciate that insight. Thank you.
Yeah, we do have that built in because we have multiple years of water during that. So we
Right.
don't have quite.
All right, well, that friendly suggestion. Is there any other discussion?
Oh, I was just gonna say, all of our grants are for 5 years, so.
Yeah. That's good. All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed?
Aye, this is Al.
Al, is that in opposition?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let's show that there was one vote in opposition and the motion passes.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I just have a few more updates. Our next grant meeting, which will be the fourth and final cycle for 2025, is April 9th. But the grants are actually due on March 19th. And there's 4 grants that I'm aware of, actually 3 grants that I'm aware of that might be submitting applications. One is another grant request for additional funding at the Stillwater Reservoir. That one is in the pipeline. There's a small dam improvements project on a dam south of Hayden. And then I believe the White River Alliance might be applying for a grant to do some riparian restoration. So those are the 3 grants that are coming along. PEPO. And PEPO is number 4, but that PEPO grant is not money that comes directly out of our local account, if I understand.
No, but we're gonna follow your process.
Yes, exactly. So that'll be in front of the guest today. So those are the 4 that are coming up. So if anyone wants to join us at that meeting, it's March 19th, or I'm sorry, April 9th, and we'd be happy to have you. Any questions of me? That's all I have for tonight.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you.
Did a great job. Yeah, so, you know, if you feel strongly about grants, that you really want to review them, this is the wrong place. You should go to the grant meeting. We'll spend an hour or more on a grant application and do a very thorough job. Right, Greg? Yeah, we do a very thorough job, and that's where this is embedded. And if you make it in here, we've done our homework for you. So, we want you to know what we did. But that's the appropriate place to interject yourself. So, if there is nothing else on that action item, now we're ready for the White River return flow study. Dr. Ryan Bailey, CSU, please.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay.
All right, it's ready to share.
Okay, thank you. All right, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thanks for the opportunity to present our results at this roundtable. I've been working with Liz for a couple of years now and Callie on this project, and just really grateful to share some results tonight. So I'll go through the presentation, and then there'll be some time for questions at the end. So just kind of jumping right in, what we would like to know is, how much groundwater enters the White River in this the Meeker area. Where and when does this occur? How do ditch diversions and groundwater return flows affect stream flow in the White River? And then what could happen to these return flows and the timing of stream flow throughout the year if flood irrigation is converted to sprinkler irrigation? And I should also note that this is, at least my portion of this project is funded through the Colorado Water Conservation Board to do the modeling portion. And we typically think of this as a gaining stream where we have high water tables that drive groundwater into the river. The high water tables are due to recharge coming in from irrigation and also from canal seepage. And I'll show some results of that in a little bit. So here's just a conceptual system or conceptual model of how we kind of think of the system. So if we have looking at a general cross section of the White River Valley near Meeker, we have canals, of course, or ditches that run through the contours. We have a high water table, and we have the river. And generally, there's groundwater flow because of the high water table compared to the river stage. Now, of course, during the growing season, we have irrigation water coming in, a little bit of rainfall coming in. That percolates down and recharges the aquifer and can raise the water table. And that red arrow represents the general rise in the water table because of this inflow of water from the soil zone. We also have seepage from the ditches, and that can also raise the water table. And then there is also some pumping from the town of Meeker, and that can, in the local area, also lower the water table because of the pumping. So that's during the spring and summer. And now if we kind of look in transition to the fall and winter months, we have a much higher water table because of that water that came in. And the question is, how persistent are those flows? How long do they last? And what is this new gradient? How high does the water table get? And what's the flow rate of the groundwater into the White River? So those are some questions we're trying to answer with this project. So the approach we're taking, the first step is learning about the system. So we want to use a couple of methods for this. First, using field data to learn about the river flow and diversion rates, and using that to learn more about how much groundwater is coming into the White River. And then the second method, we'll use a groundwater model, which we could then use in step 2 to look at scenarios. So for example, what would happen if irrigation is switched from flood to sprinkler? So I want to start with looking at some field data that we've been collecting and also analyzing to answer some of these questions. And to do this, I'd like to talk first just about general river water balance that we can perform on the White River. And for example, if we go here from right to left, you have an inflow to this reach and you have an outflow. And we'll assume that we have gauges at those two sites. So we have measured daily flow in and out of this reach of this section of the White River. We also have ditch diversions that are also monitored and provided on a daily basis. And there might be a tributary coming in as well. Could be Miller Creek or Dry Creek or Flat Creek. There's a number of tributaries that can enter into the White River. Now what we're trying to figure out is along this reach of the river, how much groundwater is also coming in. And that is represented by these black arrows. So this would be more of kind of non-point additions of water to the river all along its length from the aquifer. Now, if we have information on inflows and outflows, the diversions and tributaries, then we can back out what the contribution of groundwater is to this reach. And so we have a very simple water balance equation. The amount of water going out of this reach is equal to what's coming in, plus tributary inflow, minus diversions, plus the groundwater coming in. And if we have data on all the other flows, then we can solve for groundwater and rewrite this equation and solve now for how much groundwater is coming in. And so we were using this approach. Again, we're not doing any modeling yet, just looking at the data. And here's a map of the White River along the Meeker, in the Meeker area. And we have of course, the blue line is the White River. We have tributaries coming in. The red lines are all the ditches. The black dots along the White River are locations of ditch diversions. And the orange circles on the White River are locations of stream gauges. So either USGS or Division of Water Resources stream gauges. So we are dividing the river into 3 sections. Each section is between 2 gauges, so we can measure the inflow and the outflow. So section 1, section 2 is a little smaller, and then section 3 is from Meeker all the way down to kind of the end of our study region here. So 3 sections, each one we're applying this water balance. So I'm going to just show section 1 as an example. So here we have our 2 orange dots. Those are our inflows and outflows at gauge sites. So we have inflow coming in that we measure on a daily basis with the gauges. We have a couple of tributaries coming in. Then we have a number of ditches taking water off the river. And then we have the outflow at the downstream gauge. And then using the data from those gauge sites, we can then estimate how much groundwater is coming into the section. And again, showing that this is generally a gaining stream as groundwater is flowing into the river. Just noting where we're getting our information from, we have USGS and DWR for the outflows and inflows at the gauges. We have DWR for the ditch diversions. And then we're using a simple watershed model to figure out, just based on rainfall runoff, how much flow is coming into the tributaries. They're not gauged, but Liz has gone out the last year and a half and done some spot measurements so we can check and make sure that we're getting those flows correct. So here is an example. This is for section 1, and we do this for we apply that water balance equation for every day from 2019 to the end of 2022. And we've also actually done 23 and 24, but I'm only showing a few years here. And this plot is showing the positive values are groundwater coming into the reach, and then the negative is when it's losing, the river is seeping water back to the aquifer. But on average, there's about 3.5 CFS per mile of groundwater coming in to section number 1. And just highlighting here the late season kind of return flows that happen because of the high water table and the irrigation that brings the groundwater back to the White River. Section 2, this is above Coal Creek down to the gauge near Meeker, and this is about 6 CFS per mile that we've calculated from this water balance. And then going from that section 3, it's about 3 CFS per mile. But because it's such a long reach, section 3 adds up to a little more than the other 2 sections. And again, on this last plot, you can see in the late summer and fall months, a lot of return flows coming as you have those high water tables. Now, I'd like to show this these results as a kind of looking at flow on the river. So right now I've only shown groundwater flow rates, but what's happening to the river? And I want to use what's called a point flow chart. And this is done in other river basins. This is an example from the South Platte River Basin that you can go. There's a website on the bottom here from the Lower South Platte Water Conservation District. And they every day they update this plot and they show along the river just the average flow rate. So for example, here on the left at the Kersey gauge, it's about 750 cubic feet per second of flow. And then you see diversions, which can drop the flow because the water's leaving. And you can look at all those diversions along the length of the river. And then you have these slopes where you have groundwater coming in, which is increasing the flow before the next ditch diversion. And especially the South Platte River, highly managed, fully allocated. And if you don't have those groundwater return flow coming into the river, then the river soon goes dry and you couldn't divert water downstream. So this plot is just from a couple of days ago, but you could look at any day during the year and look at these point flow plots. I want to do something similar for the White River, looking at all the ditch diversions and the tributaries coming in and groundwater inflow. And that is this plot here. So just to narrate this is distance from the upstream gauge in miles. So the x-axis is from 0 to 35 miles as you go downstream along the White River. And then the y-axis is the average flow rate in the White River in cubic feet per second. And what I want to note first of all is, and this is an average over the last from 2019 to 2023. So it's over a few years that we're just taking average flow conditions just to get a feel for what's happening with river flow. So the White River at the gauge right below North Elk Creek, average flow is about 500 CFS over those 4 years. And as you can see, as you move downstream, you have Miller Creek is taking water out, so you have a jump down in the river flow. Oak Ridge Park is taking water out. Of course, Highland, Old Agency, and as you keep going farther downstream, Nyblock and then Powell Park, some of the big ditches taking water out. When you get finally to the downstream end, the White River below Meeker, the average flow is about 506 CFS. So even though you've had all these ditch diversions, you actually have a slightly increase in flow downstream. Now there are some tributaries coming in, Miller Creek and Coal Creek, but that flow coming in does not account for all the ditch diversions to keep this river kind of whole as it goes from upstream to downstream. And so the way it's being having this kind of same flow at the downstream end is because of all the groundwater coming in. So you can see some of these high slopes of the black line, that would be the groundwater coming in. And again, this is just based on the data, based on our water balance that we're performing on the White River. So some takeaways from this, there's only about a 9 CFS change there's an increase in 9 CFS going from the upstream to downstream. We're over about 33 miles of the White River. Tributaries come in, bring in about 60 CFS, diversions about 170. So the groundwater is about 120 CFS. So about a third of the river flow at the downstream end is because of groundwater coming in. Another way to look at this, it's about 70% of all the ditch diversions. Just to show this is a significant part of the system. And the next question is what's driving this? And that's what we'll be using the model for. Some more field data though before we get to the model. Liz and others have put in 11 or put in data loggers in 11 monitoring wells in the area, and those are shown with these black stars on the map. And we started in about November of 2023, so there's about we have about a year and a half worth of data now, which is excellent to know kind of what's happening to the water table through different seasons of the year. So what I'm showing here is on the map, I have a green circle showing the well that I'm showing, and then on the right is the plot of water table elevation. So on the right plot, the black line is ground surface. the um, the gray line is the well bottom, and then the blue line is the water table as it's fluctuating throughout the year. So this well, the water goes up and down just a few feet during the different seasons of the year. We're going to move now to one closer to Meeker, and this fluctuates quite a bit, tens of feet as you go through the seasons. And there's a lot of like daily fluctuations, and also some more seasonal fluctuations. Looks like maybe a pumping well had an effect on this in the winter of 2024. As we go more to the southeast, we have a well where you can see the water table during the summer of 2024. It goes up by about 30 feet and then comes down and goes back up again and then decreases during the winter months. And so this likely is because of recharge coming in from irrigation and from canal or ditch seepage during the summer months. And then finally one just near Coal Creek. This one only fluctuates maybe 1 or 2 feet during the seasons. So now that we've learned a little bit more about the importance of groundwater coming into the White River, I now want to talk about how we've developed a groundwater model that now we can use to answer some questions about this system. I first would like to talk about what is a groundwater model. So here we have a map of the aquifer near Meeker, and so this is the Agency Park aquifer. And what we do is overlay a grid on top of our study region. And these are called, each individual square is called a cell, so a grid cell. And I'm going to zoom in here to this location where you have a few, the Oak Ridge Park ditch and the Highland ditch taking off on the White River. So each one of these cells represents a volume of the aquifer. In this study, each cell is 200 feet on a side. So that's kind of our square on top. And then we have the water table, and then it goes down to bedrock. And this is called the saturated thickness from the water table to the bedrock. That can vary throughout the region based on how much groundwater we have in different parts of the aquifer. Now, for each of these small sections of the aquifer, we want to keep track of what's coming in and going out of the aquifer. So we have, for example, recharge from rainfall and irrigation. We have seepage from ditches that can add water to the aquifer. You can, if the cell is along the river, you can have exchange with the river. So either groundwater discharge to the river or river seepage back to the aquifer. And if there's a pumping well, then you can also keep track of how much water is leaving or being extracted through pumping. So we're looking at all the inflows and outflows and just performing a simple water balance on each of the cells, and we do it for every day during the simulation period. So for example, if we're running the model from the year 2019 to 2024, then for every day, we're going through every grid cell and doing this water balance to figure out how the groundwater storage is changing in each section of the aquifer, and also how the water table is going up and down. And as part of this, it would also simulate how much water is going to the White River. We also have lateral flow as you have groundwater flowing from one part to the other, and that's kind of connected. So I have this next slide will kind of show how that works. So for example, you can have one cell where groundwater, because of a higher water table, is going to flow to the next cell, that next section of the aquifer, and then keep flowing, and eventually, based on the gradient, that groundwater can flow to the White River. So here's some details of our model. We have a time period from 2019 to 2024. We are calculating groundwater volume in cubic feet and then convert it to acre feet, water table elevation, and groundwater flow rates for each day for each of these grid cells. Some of the features of the model, we include ditch seepage to the aquifer along every ditch in the region, recharge from rainfall and irrigation of the aquifer using a soil water balance. So we also keep track of crop evapotranspiration, runoff. You can have water runoff and be captured by a downstream ditch, which then that water could be reused for irrigation. Pumping from the Meeker well well system. And then we can have exchange between aquifer and tributaries and exchange of water between the aquifer and the White River. We are using ModFlow. It's a USGS modeling code. So as long as we provide the right data and properties of the aquifer and locations of ditches and the White River, then we can use the ModFlow code to automate these calculations. How do we know if the model is working properly? We apply groundwater exchange with the White River for those 3 sections that we talked about a few slides ago. We're keeping track of, or we're comparing water table elevation that's simulated by the model versus what we're getting in the monitoring wells, those 11 wells that I showed a few results of a couple slides ago. And also there's been a recent study on ditch seepage in certain sections, reaches of several ditches, so we can make sure that the model is also providing the right rate of ditch seepage. Just to show how we're populating some of the model input, we know we have geologic units. This is based on borehole records from over 400 wells or 400 boreholes in the region. And so each of these sections, for example, alluvium or sand or gravel, that determines how fast groundwater can flow in the aquifer. And so we have spatial variation of our geology, which is an important part of the model. Just so I can briefly show you how we're calculating recharge to the water table, we're using a soil water balance method. So we know how much rainfall is coming in. We use the coagulate weather station for that. We compute some runoff from that rainfall. We have irrigation that's coming in from our daily ditch diversion data and applied to the fields. And then some of that water runs off and can actually go to a receiving ditch down or kind of down slope. And then the rest of the water will infiltrate. Some will be used by crops, the alfalfa and the grass that's in the area. There's also some natural vegetation that can use some of the water. And then the remaining of that percolates and recharges the water table. So that is our recharge. And then that is added to the aquifer, and then the groundwater can then flow to nearby parts of the aquifer and eventually to the White River. So I'd like to show some results now of the model. So we have our 3 sections that I showed before where we did we performed our water balance. And here on the right, I'm showing in blue the monthly flow rate from the water balance method using the field data, and in red is what the model is giving. And so of course it's not perfect, but we can see that it tracks the seasonal fluctuation of the return flows of groundwater to the White River. So that's section 1. Here is section 2, again showing how the model is matching the field data. And then section 3, we have a nice fit there as well. Notice that all 3 plots have the same scale. So you can see how in section 3 we're getting more groundwater coming in, but that's also because it's a longer section of the White River. So for this, we feel fairly confident that we're getting the right exchange or return flow rates back to the White River. Now looking at groundwater flow direction, this is a map of showing flow direction with those red arrows. As you can see, kind of groundwater flowing back to the river and also along that alluvium as it tracks that river corridor. And if you compare this to a 1970s USGS study of these 2 aquifer systems, they have a very similar map from their field data, and it's matching very nicely these flow directions that the model is simulating. Just to show here kind of through a cross section, so this dotted black line is a cross section through the aquifer. And on the right is showing the ground surface along that cross section, that's the black line. And on the right, you can see kind of that depression where the White River is located. And then the dotted blue line is the simulated water table. So you can see the slope of that water table going back to the river as it flows, and then eventually will discharge into the river. And this happens this is just an example, but for all these cross sections along the river, you have a very similar pattern of high water table, which drives that groundwater towards the river. Now, how is the model doing when we look at specific locations where we have the logged water table elevation? So here, this is a well in the southeast portion of the aquifer, And the red line is the data, and the blue line is what the model is giving us to show that every summer it's going up because of the recharge coming in and the ditch seepage, and then goes down during the winter and then comes back up again. And so in this location, the model is doing very well. It's tracking that water table really nicely. If we now go farther south, again, the red line is the data, the blue line is the model. Here we're kind of overestimating that fluctuation. We're getting a little lower and higher than what the data is showing. And we can go in and do a little more model calibration to make sure that we get that right. And the next couple of months we're working on just kind of fine tuning the model. It's working. We feel like it's working well, but there's still some things we want to look at to get these plots to match even more nicely. And then here is also another well, and again, we're kind of overestimating that height during the summer, probably maybe simulating maybe a little too much ditch seepage or recharge coming in, or we're just not having that being flushed out quickly enough to the White River as it comes in. So that's water to elevation, and the last thing would be ditch seepage. So there's a recent study, I think it's just in draft form right now, for different sections of several ditches or reaches of these ditches. They estimated, just using some field instruments, how much water is being lost from the ditch into the aquifer. And this is great data, but there's not a lot of data, so we just work with what we have. And so on the right here, this is the high line ditch, and the red line is showing what the model is simulating for daily seepage in CFS, and that black dot is the field data that was recorded, or the ditch seepage recorded for the field monitoring events, and that was in July of 2024. And so at least for that summer, when there's a low flow, the model is estimating the ditch seepage to be the right value. And if we look at the Oak Ridge ditch, that was earlier in the summer with a little higher flow, about 10 CFS. And again, the model is able to track that at least for that point. So if there's more data, we could have a little more confidence in our ditch seepage, but at least we're in the right ballpark of how much seepage from the ditches is going into the aquifer. Just looking at over a typical growing season, what's happening with water fluxes. And so this plot is showing for the year 2022, the blue color is ditch diversions, the red is how much recharge is coming in, green is crop evapotranspiration, and black is ditch seepage. Just to show that of all the diversions from the ditches, most of it is either going to the aquifer via the ditch seepage or through recharge. So just showing kind of basically how from our model results where water is going. We have precipitation coming in. This is showing every value is 1,000 times 1,000 acre feet per year. But I'm going to show kind of just this shows kind of relative values. So precipitation is 30. The diverted water through all the ditches in the region is 132. Seepage from the ditches is about 24. Pumping is really small. It's just in the few wells for the Meeker town. You get some runoff from rain and irrigation. Some of that gets recaptured by down gradient ditches. And then the rest is infiltrated. So a little bit, 27 for rainfall, 101 for infiltration. And the crops and vegetation take off 38. The remainder is recharge, is 88 going to the aquifer. And then we have a lot of that going to the river, net discharges of 106. So, and then if we look at just how much groundwater is in the aquifer, generally it's 483. And so you can see how a lot of the water, about 20% of the aquifer storage is being replenished and then moved to the White River every year. So the aquifer kind of just acts as a conveyor of that water. All right, so some takeaways. We have groundwater fraction. That's the ratio of net groundwater discharge to diverted water, and that's about 80%. So of all the water that gets taken out from the White River, 80% returns. Ditch seepage is about 20% of ditch water seeps to the aquifer. If we look at a region-wide kind of irrigation efficiency, it's really low, about 35%. If we look at, how much the crops use versus how much was diverted. And so again, this is a really low value compared to other irrigated valleys. However, the majority of that quote unquote lost water goes to the aquifer and then returns slowly to the White River via groundwater flow. So the aquifer just kind of acts as this checking account as you kind of store that water through the summer, then it slowly goes back to the river during the fall and winter months. So for an average year, volumes of canal diversion, recharge, and groundwater discharge rates are equivalent to about 20 to 25% of the aquifer groundwater storage. So the aquifer acts as a conveyor system for unused river water that percolates through the soil profile, recharges the aquifer, and returns to the river and its tributaries. Now, if we look at, again, this is groundwater return flows, and you can see the black line is what the model is predicting, and you can see the increases during the summer and fall months. And so you have this constant background discharge, but then you have the this increase in the post-irrigation months because of that recharge and ditch seepage coming in, which raises the water table, and you get flows back to the river. So what we want to do now, we're just beginning this, we have a couple more months to work on this, is to now use the model for some scenarios. So if we, for example, converted all the fields from flood to sprinkler, so we're more efficient on the field. So each field would be more efficient. We don't need to divert as much water from the White River because now we can be more efficient as we apply that irrigation water. So here's just one scenario just to kind of show some preliminary results of what we're getting. If we said, for example, that we diverted 50% less water from the White River because we're more efficient. So we're still maintaining crop ET, but we just, we don't have to apply as much water because we're not losing as much to recharge because now we're using sprinklers. Then this red line shows how much less groundwater will be flowing back to the river in this scenario. So again, that's a lot more muted because you're not getting recharge and ditch seepage into the aquifer like you were under a flood irrigation scenario. So less applied irrigation water, less recharge, less return flow to the White River. This is showing the White River flow rate at the downstream gauge, and this is daily flow in CFS, again, just showing 2022 as an example. So this would be our current conditions, where you have a lot of high summer flows and then low flows in the winter. Of course, water gets removed by the ditches, so it's going to drop in the summer months, but then you see this rebound in the fall and winter because water is returning via groundwater to sustain the stream flow. Now, if you under this scenario, yep, go ahead.
Dr. Bailey, we set aside 35 minutes. We're over 30 minutes. We wanted to save some time also for questions. I just wanted to give you that perspective. Thank you.
You are right.
Continue.
This is one of my last slides. I apologize for for going a little long here. 50% diverted. So we see there's more water in the river because you're not taking as much for the ditches. But then you have less water in the river in the winter months because you have lower return flows. And just kind of zooming in here, you can see this now more fully. Summer months you have more water, but in the winter months you have less water, lower return flows. And again, this is just one simple scenario of many that we're going to be running. So the timing of flow has changed, more flow in the spring and summer, but less flow in the fall and winter. So next steps, run more scenarios. For example, conversion scenarios, how many fields and where are the fields going to be that you convert to sprinkler? Is there an optimal place to do that if there is going to be conversion? If there's calls on the river, you have decreased diversions to canals, what will happen if there's a dry climate versus wet climate? And so these are some questions we're going to be answering in the next couple of months with this model. So thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, I'll take those now.
Thank you, Dr. Bailey. That's very interesting questions.
Andy Rossi.
Yeah, thank you. great study, great presentation, very interesting. Thank you for doing the hard work. I know these are really, really complex and hard. I just have a couple questions. One,
Sure.
First question is, how are you physically measuring the canal seepage?
So that was the field study from last summer.
Yes.
I didn't do that. I was given a report of someone who did that work. So, and I know it was in,
What we did is we used flow tracker twos, and we had the ditches turn off all of their diversions between the upstream and the downstream side of that. And then we measured, we did 2 different transects on the upstream and 2 different transects on the downstream side simultaneously. We had teams at both ends. And so we should have been able to capture, anything lost should have been evaporation plus seepage. And the report was done by Eric Elliott from Farmers Conservation Alliance, and he calculated the evaporation and so attributed the rest to seepage.
Okay, great, thanks. My second question is, the early time series plots you showed of sort of comparing your model performance to measured flows. At the tail end, the very end, there seems to be like across, I think it was 3 or 4 time series locations that you showed. There's a big divergence there. Is that artifact of the mod flow code, or is there something else going on there?
I'm going to go back to just make sure I know what you're referring to. Oops. Let's see here. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I went too far. Here we go. Right there. Yep.
Yes. So right at the tail end of your time series, you can see that there's appears to be the greatest discrepancy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. This is through 2023. We just extended the model through 2024, and we're just processing that. I'm curious to see if that continues, or if it's just that artifact of that I think that's like June of 2023. I'm going to look into that. Like that looks like a pretty big difference, and it does kind of happen maybe almost every June. Looks like there's a month there where the model's not capturing it. And again, it might just be that we're not accounting for all the complexities of the system, like the river, the river stage versus in kind of the geology in those areas. But thanks for pointing that out. I'd have to go back and kind of see why that's happening.
Okay, great. And then the last question is, you had your other bar chart where you had sort of, I think in red, you showed recharge, where you had the relative different contributions. Yep.
This one? Yeah.
Yep, that one. So those recharge spikes, is that precipitation events? What's going on there?
Yep.
Okay.
So that's the only way that you could have more than the diversion. What I should do is plot rainfall kind of along the top here. We could take a look at that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Also, just a shout out to, oh, go ahead. Yep.
No, go ahead, Doctor.
I have a question. I know we're gonna all say it's great to water more efficiently. Have you asked some of the drawbacks to watering more efficiently in these fields?
Well, I think kind of what we're showing is that, you could do on-farm efficiency to limit your recharge and use water more efficiently. But I think if you're looking at the watershed, that's kind of detrimental to the overall patterns of return flow during those late seasons, the late fall and winter months. And so, and this has been shown in other river valleys in the West as well, is that you can get more efficient on the field, but from a watershed perspective, it might be harming downstream flows. At least you're for sure going to be changing those flow patterns when you change the on-farm efficiencies.
Yeah, being a smart ass, I spend a lot of time in Division 2, and they'd like to have a long discussion about going to flood our sprinkler irrigation.
And that's why we did this study.
Right.
In the White River is exactly that. So can I provide just a little bit of context?
Oh, absolutely, please.
Okay.
Because this was a great study.
Well, I'm sorry that we didn't do this before we opened up the conversation. But the reason, I mean, besides the valuable information the study brought forward.
Yeah.
This is what's come from the Integrated Water Initiative out of the White River. It's one of the projects. So the Basin Roundtable has funded that for the last 4 or 5 years. So that's why you're getting this study back. And so as we had those conversations within the Integrated Water Initiative, talking about, okay, what would it look like if we do that? And we're talking about trying to protect the health of the river. So how does agriculture impact that? Lots of people believed that if we didn't have that flood irrigation, Rangeley would be awfully thirsty in the late fall and early winter. I think that this pretty much verified that. But as the district's theory of lots of people have theories and nobody had the data, now there's the data. So I think that's the value of your grant dollars that have helped drive this forward.
No, it's an important debate, takes place in every basin, and it's wonderful to have really good data like this. We also have an integrated water management plan, action item and recommendation that was for a return flow study on the Yampa. Andy, I think you were kind of working on that project. Do you know what the status of that return flow study on the Yampa is today?
Yeah, thanks, Ken. We ran into a conundrum, and I'm going to answer your question with a question to Ryan. So having done a very specific localized study, would you feel comfortable when you're done with the study and you're going to publish a paper? Can you put in context the relative applicability of this specific study and then taking it and applying even to other places within the Yampa Basin without replicating your methodology first?
Yeah, I mean, if the irrigation methods are similar and the groundwater has similar properties of, is it kind of a sand gravel alluvium? It seems like these results are transferable. You see similar in like the Arkansas River Basin and the South Platte, just really conductive alluvium, irrigation, and I shouldn't say over irrigate, if you have a lot of irrigation and a lot of that is recharges the aquifer, that water is going to make its way back to the river and sustain downstream flows. So I think to some degree it's transferable. I would love to do more studies like this just to make sure that we're getting it right for different river valleys, but my gut feeling would be it is transferable.
Yeah, so Ken, to kind of follow up on what Ryan just said, we've gotten to the point where these studies are so complex, and you saw how much work Ryan and his team did, that we were worried about being too localized at a certain set of agricultural operations, say like very local to the Bear River, and that might not be transferable to below, say, Stagecoach or on the Elk River or in the middle Yampa. So I think we're going to take a hard look at what Ryan and his team did here and see if it's applicable to other places. So we haven't done anything past that besides doing a lot of reading and I would say literature research.
Well, we would assume that the irrigation techniques are quite similar. So the biggest question is, what's our substrate like? And if it's similar, then there would probably be a very high correlation between the two basins.
Yeah, I think the other thing you need to probably do is to the comment that was made in the room about is Rangeley going to be thirsty, is you need to quantify the magnitude of the offset between reduced summer flows or increased summer flows to reduce winter flows. Is that an even trade-off, or is it a bit of a muted or ratioed response?
So if I could respond to that, in the White River Basin, the issue is we have no storage. So once it goes down and past Rangeley and we got no place to put it between, Meeker and it hits that state line, it's pretty easy for me to figure out which one's the better for Rangeley's sake in particular. Is that if they aren't going to have that water come August, September, October, there are those conversations that there's been times it's basically been dry. I also would like to just give a brief minute to Liz. people need to understand how much time and energy Liz has put into this.
I was about to
study.
give her a shout out. Liz is amazing.
She has done all that and worked with USGS. I mean, not just went out and haphazardly done it. It was done by USGS standards, basically.
Liz, would you, give us a quick comment?
Yeah, first thing I want to say thank you to the roundtable for funding, to the Colorado River Water the Colorado Water Conservation Board and the Colorado River District. That is huge to have your support for this project. So thank you very much. This project was conceived, our group, the Water Initiative, is a community-led coalition of 15 different entities. And so this was really put together by environmental, industrial, municipal, and agriculture interests. And our motivation, the motivation of the group, was to understand what is making the river work right now. Because the Rio Blanco community perceives that the White River is functioning very well. And so as we contemplate drier years, river administration, other things that we may not be able to have any control over, we want to know what's working now so that as policy decisions are made, we can have good data to guide those decisions. And so that's really the fundamental reason. The Ohio River in Gunnison appears to be having trouble because they went to efficiencies and have lost their groundwater recharge. One of our members buys hay from somebody in Jenkins, Utah, and Jensen, Utah, and they are not getting hay crops anymore because the upstream users went to sprinkler irrigation. So they don't have that recharge available to divert and make hay crops. And so we're very, very anxious to understand how the river system is working now. And so that we can hopefully maintain that into the future. And I'm going to give the shout back to Ryan, because we were so fortunate to have been steered to him. It was an offshoot of the algae study. That we were able to make contact, because it is, when I see all of the work and the data, because it is, the more I learn about the water, the more I just know it's complicated. And
Job security.
well, somebody was saying, oh, our water didn't show that, our model didn't show that. And they said, of course, our model is not nearly as complex as yours. And we didn't take into account all the variables that Dr. Bailey took into account for you. His work has also been published in the Journal of Hydrology, which is a huge bonus, and kudos to him for doing the quality of work that the Journal of Hydrology will publish the study.
Well, we're 45 minutes in now, so what I want to do is thank Dr. Bailey for not only an excellent presentation, but some really excellent research that is really quite valuable for the basin, for the Northwest Colorado. And thanks to all the folks in White River and to Liz for all your work. This is excellent use of the funding that we received, and I think we all learned a lot tonight. That was even stronger recharge than I had anticipated. Did Colorado Water Conservation Board have any comments on this, or is there anything else going on that's coordinated through the state on return flow?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I think,
Andy, I'm not sure if I have your email address, but Dr. Bailey is going to be giving a technical presentation on the model to the Colorado River District and other interested parties. So if you contact me or say now, somehow give me your email address, I can get you a link to that meeting.
Yeah, and get
because,
Brian Hodge also.
okay, because the concept there is to get into the nitty gritty of how Dr. Bailey has done the model, so that, because Gunnison is wanting to do one, and so that this can be transferred. Job security for Dr. Bailey.
Thank you.
Hey, federal funding is gone, so state funding might be nice.
We'll make sure those dates get sent to the roundtable for those presentations and
Super, thanks. Thank you to the White River and Dr. Bailey. So unless there's something we need to talk about, we will move on. In a futile attempt to stay on schedule, the Rock County Water Quality Project. I think this is Greg Peterson. All right, and you are a veteran of our presentation guidelines. You have guidelines.
Yeah.
Okay, great, perfect.
Thanks for having me here. Some of you have probably gotten this speech. I'm talking to anybody who has a pulse right now about this project that we're wrapping up. A few years ago, our organization decided to get involved in edge of field monitoring. Who here is familiar with edge of field water quality monitoring? They do this all the time back east. It's old hat there. Something still relatively new that we've been doing in Colorado. And I went and begged and pleaded and bribed a couple of ranchers I know to say, hey, can we monitor the runoff coming off of your ranch? And we actually got people willing to do that. And why did we do this is, I think there's a lot of questions about the impact ag does and doesn't have on water quality. And let's hop to the next, next slide. And we really want to get some baseline data. What are we doing? What are we not doing? What about best management practices? I mean, you can go and find to the day how much nitrogen you should be applying to a corn crop under a sprinkler. Irrigated pastures, it is different by the county. What kind of fertilizer practices you can use. And also we're seeing that when there are water quality problems, are we contributing to that? And so the ag water quality program, we really relied on that team out of CSU, Colorado State University, to do the real science. They couldn't be here tonight. They were either sick or at another meeting, so you get me, a non-scientist, trying to explain their work. This is with the Department of Ag, CSU, and the Health Department. It's actually entirely funded by the agricultural community. A few years ago, we decided to tax ourselves on fertilizer tonnage and pesticide and herbicide applications, and that funds the ag water quality program at CSU. Next slide. Here let's skip again. I'll try to save us some time here. And next one. So when we talk about an edge of field water quality sampling, it's really this unit here. Looks like about half the size of a fridge and costs $20,000 a pop. Because how do we show the impact that we have on water quality? We have large modeling studies, but we're at a survey on what every farmer or rancher is doing. We have to spend this amount of money for each field to really collect data. And then they run these smaller units at the intake of every field to determine what is actually going on in each field. But the team out of CSU, they've been working all throughout the state. We can see that's what this setup looks like. And they create a flume to run that water through. And those are sampling water. They can do it on a timer, pattern, with irrigations, and they're refrigerated, which is just as necessary. Next slide. Let's keep on going. Next slide. But when we're talking about what are we looking at with these, nitrogen, phosphorus, sediment, and the different forms of nitrogen and phosphorus. And so one thing that started with this project was in a lot of row crop operations, a best management practice that comes up a lot is a grass filter strip. And at the end of your field of corn, sugar beets, grain, you have a 10, 20 foot wide grass filter strip, and that acts as a filter for the runoff. And we were thinking, well, isn't pretty much every cow-calf operation a giant grass filter strip? Shouldn't that be doing something? And this is just results from one of their studies on the Front Range. They're doing these, just looks at just the sediment loss on these fields and the difference. You can just see it in the water, literally. Conventional tillage, less tillage, least tillage. That more conventional tillage with a mold-bore plow, often that you're doing after like a sugar beet crop, you're going to get more of those total suspended solids coming off. Next slide. But actually, from what we were getting from our results is in comparison, you've got the conventional tillage, the conservation tillage, filter strips, and then over here, mountain meadow hay fields. Yes, in terms of total dissolved suspended solids, that the results in these systems that we're seeing, and we had one ranch in Rowe County, one in Gunnison, one in Mesa. In general, we're seeing, yeah, there's less total suspended solids coming off of those than any other kind of ag operation. So that idea, that hypothesis that aren't these just a big filter strip, really demonstrate, yeah, they are doing that kind of job. Next slide. And so we started, this is the team from CSU. They did a great job on this. The Ag Water Quality Program, and then we also had CDPHE funds to help with this project. Next slide. And let's go to the next one. So what did we do in the Yampa? We had a great family near the town of Yampa who participated in this project with us. And we wanted to get baseline data. And they really took it and run with it. And we're really trying to figure out how can we best keep this expensive input fertilizer on our fields. In a lot of ag operations, and especially in cow-calf operations, that's your most expensive input. And it really doesn't pay for any of that to be running off the edge of the field. And you can see this field, we looked at the inflow and the outflow. And unlike a row crop operation where you have these really nice squares and rectangles and circles, every one of these, they look like a mess, these fields that people are trying to irrigate, where you have water running off in 4 or 5 different places on every single field. This family, we ended up putting on piezometers throughout the field to measure just the nutrients going just right before the subsurface, isotope studies to look at what kind of nitrogen is coming off the field, and also did a lot of drone imagery mapping to really see how well is their crop taking up nitrogen. And this is, as you can see here, what we refer to as just wild flood irrigation. Next slide. And what we were seeing at this ranch and every other one pretty consistently is that the field, it really did, in that filter strip, it absorbed and it took in more selenium and the total suspended solids and phosphorus. That in terms of inflow and outflow, we consistently see that those 3 were much lower on the outflow than they were on the inflow. Not really much of an effect at all on nitrogen or nitrites or salinity. And but like we had thought, okay, those nutrients that connect to solids like a phosphate, yes, the field is picking those up and then in a way actually cleaning the water. After our first year, the owners here, they brought up, well, can we figure out with the nitrogen that is coming off the field, what is it? Is it from cows? Is it from fertilizer? Because this field, they work it pretty hard. That's where they do their winter feeding, they do their calving, and every cow-calf operation is completely different in how they manage their acreage and their cows and how they move those around. And he was worried. He's like, I don't know if I can put my cows somewhere else. And when we did the isotope test, we got the results, and pretty much everything that was coming off in terms of nitrogen was fertilizer. And at first we thought, oh, this isn't good. And he's like, no, I can manage my fertilizer. The cows, I have a hard time managing. And we would do that. I mean, every year, he would really change the way that he would flood irrigate, whether it was doing 3-week sets, 2-week sets, 1-week sets. We started doing not irrigating all the way to the end of the field and just creating these buffer zones where we didn't irrigate. And here, just also trying to figure out, okay, how well are their plants taking up that nitrogen? And pretty consistently, what we're finding is these people are under fertilizing. That often they're mining whatever nitrogen is in, by the end of the season, they have mined whatever nitrogen is in the fertilizer, is in the manure, is in the soil, and there really isn't much left. If anything, they could be applying more. It's just for a lot of these operations, that's almost not cost effective at times. Next one. So we had the opportunity, and Andy Rossi's on here, and Andy, chime in if I screw anything up. And they let us, you can see Stagecoach Reservoir, set up one of these units really just on this creek that ran and hid below the reservoir for us to have a comparison to this ranch. And so Andy helped out, Todd Hagenboo and his mini excavator, really big help. You all probably know this, but you have a lot of rocks in your soil here. and rocks that are like the size of me. And we couldn't have done that without Todd. And in this area above the monitoring, you do occasionally have some cattle up there. Honestly, you probably have more hunters up there in the off season, but it was our background site. Next slide. And then the team, they also would pull out water and do grab sampling before as inflows into the reservoir, just downstream, and then even in the reservoir. Next slide. Or actually, sorry, I missed one thing, my mistake. But really what we found that we were pretty pleased with is that the runoff coming off at this site and near Stagecoach times was very similar to the managed agricultural site. And at times you couldn't even tell the difference between a managed agricultural cow-calf operation and this open space. And so we were pretty pleased with that. It really made us think a lot just about what are causing some of these water quality problems. Next one. And then just one other thing to mention is, boy, you can sequester a lot of carbon in these operations. Often the organic matter, it's in a regular row crop operation in Colorado, 1-2%. If you're higher than that, you're doing great. Throughout all of these sites that we had on the western slope, they were anywhere from 4 to almost 12% organic matter. That these are a real huge carbon sink, really just by doing their day-to-day operations. Next slide. So some of the findings that we came away from this is, yeah, that these fields act as a vegetative filter strip. They can reduce solids in the runoff, especially phosphate, total suspended solids, selenium, keeping those sediment bound chemicals in the field. That also we can add salts to outgoing water. Some nutrients do come off of these fields, but we've never found anything that was actually a concern. And there's some promising BMPs with these practices, using just fertilizer timers and fertilizer setbacks from the end of the field. We're gonna start meeting with a lot of fertilizer applicators because they probably have great information that we really want to use from them and compare to what we found. And then irrigation water management. Some places you do have control, some places you don't, but we did find that with some of these shorter sets, we had a lot better results. One thing, but sometimes you get fertilizer when you get fertilizer. One year we had that happen, I believe it was 2022. And if you haven't been aware, fertilizer's been really expensive. It's gotten a little bit better, but in 2022, if you could get fertilizer ordered, you took it when you got it. And sure enough, they applied fertilizer, and then that's when irrigation started right after that. We lost quite a bit. So that's something that when you have control over that can be really helpful. Next slide. So thank you for your time. And we're right now just talking about this project. What really pleased me with this is that after we started this project, we had a group of farmers down in Fruita come to us, and we've been working with them for over a year now on very similar projects where we're getting baseline data that we don't have before. But also what I really like about this is it gives the farmers and ranchers an opportunity to essentially play around practices without fear of getting their hands slapped. And the farmers that we're working with in Fruita, all really looking at nitrogen stabilizers is a big one right now, and different kinds of tillage methods. And I was just down there 2 weeks ago, and we're planning this year out. And so I think that this is a really great tool for us as a community to continue to show what impact we are and aren't having on water quality, but also to really fine tune some of these practices. I'm gonna stop right there and see if we have any questions.
Doing great on time.
Okay.
We have about 7 minutes left. Please.
Just kind of curious if you have any comments about fall fertilizing versus spring fertilizing.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one that we wanted to look at. You have one study that's been done on fall fertilization that more of that fertilizer can be absorbed. Depends if you get enough moisture in the winter. But what we found when really talking with a lot of the operators here is how do you manage cattle and fall fertilization? And they were really concerned about, if I fertilize in the fall, I'm gonna get that growth in the spring, and I don't want my cows just killing it and just eating it.
Too much nitrate.
Yeah. So really what we found is, I mean, the one guy who did experiment that with in the Gunnison, he just has Timothy hay, no cattle.
Right.
So that sounds like just the logistics of dealing with livestock make that a lot difficult or easier.
I mean, I fall fertilize mostly because my meadow's way too wet in the spring to do anything different, and I don't run any cattle, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm curious with what you've seen over the years. Have you seen much
I
of a
like it a
difference?
lot.
Yeah.
And I think that it gives the fertilizer the nitrogen time to actually bind into the soil and into the root structure, and then is available in the spring when stuff grows.
And this is something that's interesting is fertilizer practices like that almost seem to change by the county. And I think honestly, probably almost by the applicator, I bet is really what dictates those.
So are they using pellet fertilizer or, liquid fertilizer for the most part?
So we had to shift one year because of costs, because one was cheaper than the other. Typically, they are using liquid fertilizer on that field. Yeah.
Questions? Any questions online?
It's like Andy.
I see Andy.
Yeah, I don't have a question, but I just want to say this. I'm a strong supporter of these kinds of studies. As some of you may know, we've got a lot of interest in water quality in the upper basin. And I'm going to make the offer right now that even though it's probably too late for 2025, but if there are any agricultural producers within the Upper Yampa Water Conservancy District that are interested in performing a study on your land, please come talk to me for funding. I'd be happy to help you out with this kind of study because I think they really are of great value. Thanks.
Yeah, we're gonna be meeting up with some people in that area too. Just, if anything, I think you're helping out the community, but you're also really giving it up, dial in how you're applying those fertilizers just for your own checkbook, honestly.
Thanks for that offer, Andy. Make sure you share that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Andy, that's huge. Thank you so much, because so many, if you go through a lot of these grants and stuff, people are afraid. I mean, they don't know what the outcome's gonna be and how it could be used against them. So to not have those big grants that has strings attached that people are afraid of anyway, whether they really are there or not, doesn't matter. It's the fear of it.
I think what made this work is when we got funding from CDPHE, we told them, we're not telling you the names, we're not telling you the locations, we're not telling you anybody who's involved with it and like it. And they liked it. And what was interesting though, is by the second or third year, all of the ranchers have been public about this. The Rossies up in Routt County, they spoke at the Sustaining Watersheds Conference last year. They've all presented on this. And so that's been really interesting to see too, how quick, at first they were all pretty nervous. They were like, Greg, are you gonna lose our ranch for us? And I'm like, I hope not. But yeah, they all came away from this feeling pretty good.
And Andy, I want to make sure that I understand that your offer is to assist within the district boundaries. Is that correct? So that would be primarily in Routt County, a little bit of Moffett County. Is that correct?
That's correct, Ken. Those of you who are not familiar with our district boundary, the Moffett County part is south of the river from the Elkhead Creek confluence out past the town of Craig, just a little sliver out there, mostly where the tri-state power plants are. But most of Routt County is within there, and we'd love to see these kinds of studies replicated as far and wide as we could, because we really think, you just saw a presentation with 2 sites. There's a lot of questions that could be asked about 2 sites being applicable across the county, but it's an important question. I personally think that water quality, especially with nutrients, is the next biggest concern for the agricultural community. And the more information you have to arm yourselves in these discussions, the better off you'll be.
Thanks, Andy. Other questions? Anybody online? See anybody else? Thank you, great, thank you. And you have, yep, 7 seconds.
You get down to the sentence now.
Okay, where are we at here?
Second choice.
Aaron Light, would you enlighten us?
Yeah, I think it's time to talk some more about the White River tonight. I wanted to mention tonight that we did hold a public meeting on March 4th concerning the designation of the White River Basin as overappropriated. We being Jason Ullman and myself. So it was great to have Jason in Meeker last Tuesday, where again, we gave a presentation on what it looks like to designate a basin overappropriated. We did have a lot of questions from the public, but no indication that people were disagreed with the designation. And so soon after Tuesday, I don't remember, it was Wednesday or Thursday, Jason Ullman did formally designate the White River as overappropriated. Now, with that said, he did something very similar to what former Director Ryan did on the Yampa River. And he's giving some grace periods for the type of well permits that people might receive. So what people have, if you're for anybody that wants to file for a brand new well permit, they can do that up through April 30th and be under the existing situation of the system not being overappropriated. Starting May 1, however, if someone comes in for a new well permit, those permits will be evaluated as though the basin's overappropriated. Those are for new well permits. If an individual has an existing well permit or an even existing well without a well permit, and they need to either get a new well permit or have the well permit modified so that it's consistent with their actual uses, that for example, their well permit might be only permitted for domestic use inside a single family dwelling, but they're actually using it for 2 dwellings, they can come in and get that changed to be consistent with their actual uses and do that by December 31st of 2025. The only thing they will have to do is provide evidence demonstrating that those uses were actually in existence starting May 1 of 2025. So, so everybody should be aware of that designation. Also, I just thought I'd mention that I have already met with Rio Blanco Water Conservancy District. I met with them 2 weeks ago to discuss the overappropriation. And then I plan to meet with Yellow Jacket Water Conservancy District to discuss the overappropriation and answer any questions about that. And that's going to be in early April. And then lastly, my administrative assistant, who is also the one that does all of our well permitting in Division 6, is holding in-person work sessions, I guess. I don't want to say they're work sessions. People can sign up to meet with her in Meeker. She's going to Meeker tomorrow and will be there through Friday. She has 15 water users signed up to meet with her to discuss well permitting and what their well permit looks like and whether they need to do anything with that well permit. And then she hopes to, if it's successful, which like right now it's looking like it will be successful because she had 15 people sign up right away. She'll probably hold a couple more sessions before May 1. So we are providing that service for more local assistance where somebody can come in and actually meet with my well permit staff. And Ken, that's all I have to tell the group today about.
Well, thank you, Aaron. Any questions of Aaron?
Andy's got his hand up.
Andy.
Yeah, Aaron, if you wouldn't mind, when overappropriation happens, especially in the context of new well permits, could you give us a sense of what the landscape is for augmentation water sources in the White River Basin?
They're not very good. You heard Callie mention earlier that there's not a lot of reservoirs in that basin. And, part of the reason I do want to meet with Yellow Jacket Water Conservancy District is to discuss the importance of augmentation water in a basin. I have definitely seen what has happened to areas in the North Platte River Basin because they have no augmentation water and their inability to grow as far as in any type of industrial type growth, if you will. I've had many people come in to my office and discuss options for businesses outside the city limits or town limits of Walden, but wanting to have some type of operation, by way of example, a meat packing plant, and they would rely on a well. Though they're not able to pursue such a business interest because they have no augmentation water. And I'd hate to see something similar happen to the White River. And so I really do hope that whether it's one district or both districts up there, Yellow Jacket or Rio Blanco, can put their heads together and try to find ways to develop an augmentation source and then ultimately an augmentation plan.
Andy, I'm gonna volunteer you as a possible source of information and experience dealing with, you have several augmentation plans that you manage, correct?
Yeah, there's one on the Yampa and the Elk, but also don't forget, is it City of Craig or Moffat County just went through their augmentation plan adjudication also for that part of the river.
So you have some local help. You decided to pursue that.
So is that latest one, is it done?
No, I don't think it's finished.
No, it's not. It's still pending.
Then you gotta have water in a bucket.
Aaron, it's Frank Alfone. I had a question, and just maybe if you could provide an update. The notice for measurement rules, I think you were gonna send the violation notices out in January. Can you provide maybe just an update on how many extensions you received, kind of, so we understand the context of that?
Yeah.
If any?
I am still working through all the extensions we've gotten. We've gotten quite a few. I mean, my email is getting fairly large now. My measurement rules coordinator sends me an email each time there's an extension that needs to be approved, and I have probably 30 or more to yet approve, and I've approved that many so far. So we have quite a few extensions, Frank. And my thought process was not to start issuing orders in January because people still are filing for extensions for that January 16th of 2025 deadline. So we're going to continue to accept those extensions. But if we don't receive an extension request by probably the middle of April, we will consider starting to issue orders for those that aren't in compliance and didn't file an extension.
Great, thanks, Aaron, appreciate it.
And I might add, Frank and everybody else in the room, our next deadline is July 16th of 2025. So in accordance with the schedule put forth in those rules. So we have a July 16th, 2025 deadline. And then our third and final deadline is January 16th of 2026. So we have a lot of structures coming up here in the near future that are going to have to come into compliance with those rules.
Not seeing any other questions for you, Aaron. Thanks for that report and that update.
Thanks, Ken.
All right. We're moving on to Rebecca Breezemore. Rebecca.
Hi, everyone. I believe Sally has slides.
Yeah, let me get there real quick.
And I am sorry for not being there in person. I was called for jury duty early tomorrow morning. So decided to stay home to make it a little easier, but I'm having definitely some FOMO missing you guys not being there in person tonight.
There we go.
Perfect. Thanks, Sally. And you can go ahead and go to that next slide. Yeah, so always busy at the River District. We do have a board meeting coming up in April next month, 15th and 16th. It's about a day and a half that is, of course, open to the public except for our executive session. And we do have board packets that come out prior if you're interested in reading about what we will be discussing. I do want to highlight that one thing our board has been really interested in is following the stakeholder sessions on Regulation 87, the dredge and fill permit program in the state that's being set up right now. And that is something that I, as well as a couple of our legal staff, will be giving an update to the board on at that board meeting. So if you're interested in hearing how those stakeholder sessions are going and, you know, how the River District is being involved, I encourage you to tune in for that part. Relatedly, of course, the legislative session is in full swing. We're about at the midpoint, and the River District does follow those bills. It hasn't been quite as water intense in terms of bills this year as in previous years. But as Zane would remind me to say, our Director of Government Relations, that doesn't mean it couldn't heat up in the last half of the session. If you're interested, of course, those are open to the public if you want to join into our biweekly legislative updates. And then last kind of on this slide, right after the last Basin Roundtable, we at the River District were notified that our $40 million request for Infrastructure Reduction Act funding for Shoshone Water Rights Preservation Project was approved, and which was very exciting. And then, of course, with the federal funding freezes, it was frozen a few days later. So that's still on pause at this point. But we remain really hopeful. We have, broad support across the Western Slope and from a lot of elected officials across the state as well. So we're very hopeful. And to kind of give you an update on total funding with that $40 million funding, $40 million grant fund from the Bureau of Reclamation, we are at a total of $96 million out of our $99 million. So that is exciting. And we are going to be going to the CWCB in May to offer that water right for an in-stream flow use. Next slide, please. And of course, I hope to see you guys at our State of the River events. They're coming up in a couple weeks. We have Lower Yampa and the Upper Yampa in Craig, and then the week after we'll be in Rangeley for the White River. You can come hear more about the White River return flow study and a lot of other really great presentations. So yeah, that's all I have.
Very good. Questions for the Colorado River District, Tim?
Are those dates right on the upper,
No, they are not.
reversed?
They're reversed.
Yeah.
So Upper Yampa is gonna be March 25th, Lower Yampa is March 26th.
I was about to change my calendar.
Yeah, they're
reversed.
Thanks, Patrick. I feel like I thought we fixed that and apparently we didn't. So don't show up at the wrong one on the wrong night.
So, and what time are they? I missed it, sorry.
Yeah, that is a great question. I want to say there's 6 p.m.
like 6 to 8 or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the dinner starts a little bit earlier. So I think dinner starts like 5:30 or 5:45.
That's what I kind of did.
Other questions of the Colorado River District? Nobody online? All right, thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you, guys.
Well, let's see, that would bring us to the River Committee and the Interbasin Compact Committee. Well, the Big River Committee did not meet today. Jeff has some other obligations. He's out of town and he was hoping that he could join us remotely, but I just checked and I still don't see his name on here, so I don't think he's gonna make it. So you're at my mercy. We did have a Interbasin Compact Committee meeting the 26th of February. It was in Westminster. went really well. It's part of the change that we're seeing is that, we're meeting like full-length meetings, full day with a lot of content. There's still some presentations, but there's a lot of discussion. And, you know, we're trying to help the roundtables and the Colorado Water Conservation Board implement the state water plan. And we have 50 agency action items and 50 partner action items. So we're trying to help prioritize those. What's most important to the Yampa is not really the same for the Arkansas. So we need to make sure that we have some flexibility as well as also coordinating our efforts. So that's what we're working on. One of the things that's significant is we agreed to set up a subcommittee to work on some of the details. So looking through our low and no regrets document, I think it's about, 85 pages. We have a state water plan. You don't even want to know how many pages are in there, but we have some guidance. But our job as a subcommittee is to kind of sift through that so that when we come back in June to really be refining the content for the C9 summit this fall. So that's a real important bit of work that we're doing. And it's different from what we've done, what IVCC has done in the past. I think that what I'm hearing the membership for the committee say is that we want the Colorado Water Conservation Board to look at the roundtables as a real resource. This is a grassroots organization that none of the other states on the Colorado River can brag about. And it seems that after almost 20 years, that we could be more fully utilized. The vision for the IVCC was written in 2005. So we know things have changed in that length of time. We're now looking at not a 5-year drought, we're looking at a almost 30-year drought. So we need to be making sure that we're continuing to plan for drought and all the impacts. So knowing that, we will have a meeting this Friday. And Jeff, do you want to say, Kat, you want to say a couple words about that?
Yeah, I guess I can. So this is a subcommittee of the IVCC membership, really focused on taking a look at the low and no regrets document from 2013 that got incorporated into the basin implementation plans and the first water plan. Because of just the state of things and some things needed updated, didn't get incorporated into the 2023 water plan. And so the IVCC has kind of been wrestling with updating that over the past year or so. And so they created a subcommittee to really take a look at that and try to, work on what needs to be updated, what can be carried forward, what are some overlaps with some of the discussion at the C9 summit from 2024. And then, taking a look at the basic implementation plans too. This first meeting, I'm guessing, will be sort of orienting, getting, some tasks outlined and things like that. And then setting up more meetings in the future. So if you're interested, it is open to the public. It is a public meeting. So if you're interested, you all are pretty well represented on the IVCC with Jeff and Ken. I think Ken's gonna be on the subcommittee. This was maybe some sort of Ken's idea, at least, in conjunction with some other IVCC.
I had help.
Yeah, you did. So yeah, looking forward to getting that work started. Yeah.
Thanks, Jeff. Kat, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I'm looking forward to the subcommittee meeting now. I think that, from the sound of it, Sean's shared a few things with me. I think that it's gonna develop a good approach going forward. I'm excited to see how this develops.
Yeah, I think it's hard. I would just summarize it as saying your IVCC members are trying really hard to be more relevant and really assist the Water Conservation Board and make the work that we do here more important, more relevant. So that's an important step forward. There was one presentation here. It was fairly early. Let's see if I see it. It was on the dredge and fill permit. So anyway, I'm gonna have Sally go ahead and put up the series of slides here. I have a short summary that I wanted to share with you. Mark Shea,
It should be in that legislative update agenda.
it is, and what you just saw, the slides that you just saw were some, we have both minutes and the slide deck that we used at the IVCC meeting. So Sally and I are gonna send this out to you tomorrow. So I'm not gonna bore you with all the details, but there was this presentation that Mark Shea did. And how is Mark, he's just working for whom on this issue?
So Mark works for Colorado Springs Utilities.
Okay.
He's their watershed health program manager or something like that. So he works a lot in like fire mitigation, water quality stuff. He's also a recovering lawyer. And he's the chair of the Arkansas Basin Roundtable.
So Mark did an excellent presentation, and basically the sum of what he said was, you know, that really nice hour-long presentation we got at our January meeting? This is a much shorter version, and this is probably 3 really relevant points that you need to understand as you follow this rulemaking for these 401 permit. And it's called Rule 87, Regulation 87. The first one talks about this negotiation that goes on between the Colorado Water Quality Control Division, which controls, they're the ones that issue this permit. And they have, they can ask for authority of the division to require, if mutually agreed to by the applicant, to require some additional conditions for the permit. In Mark's mind, and I think he's probably not alone, it seems to be a bit of an unfair situation for the applicant. They can either agree to potentially injure their water rights, accept the diversion, bypass, and other limits to their water rights yield, or don't get a permit from the state if they need to develop their water rights. So that's his interpretation, but basically what he's saying is maybe this negotiation that's outside of the immediate scope is not exactly what we want to do. The second point that he makes, I think it's the next one, is about activity as a whole. And normally the division just considers the actual dredge and fill activity that affects the state waters. But also considers some of the long-term operation of the project. And this long-term operation of the plant of this project could include future diversions, storage, et cetera, how those future operations might affect water quality and other results that the division thinks should be mitigated as a requirement for obtaining the permit. So that's a long-winded way of saying they really they're considering in this rulemaking to really expand what they're considering on whether or not you should be allowed to have this permit. So I think everybody in this room goes, well, I see why Mark was a little concerned about this. The final one is that typically, once you get a 404 permit, you got a 404 permit. And unless you fail to take action on it within 5 years, it doesn't mean that you ever have to reapply. That's not the provision that is being considered, is that everyone would reapply for an update on their permit every 5 years. That's a significant change as well. You're going to receive an email that has this information, specifically what's the language in the document, but I wanted to make sure I took a few minutes and explained it. It's pretty important stuff. And it sort of got lost in the hour-long presentation we got the last time. So this is the 5-minute version. So you're going to get this tomorrow and pay attention and please share it with your friends and your organizations and your agencies. We want to make sure that they're aware of this. I will include Mark's language with his permission because he does a nice narrative that is pretty easy to understand, but it certainly bears out that we want to pay attention to that. Trying to think what else from that meeting that I really want to emphasize. I think I'd rather try to get us out of here a little early. Just know that your IVCC is working really hard and that really welcome is the CWCB staff is very accommodating and very interested in trying to expand the scope of the work that we do together. So having said that, I go back to our agenda and talk, let's see, we've got Pebble, and you've heard enough from me, so I'll let Sally update you on the public education participation outreach.
I'll just add real quick
Oh, please.
to the IDCC discussion. I'm also working on posting the recording from the meeting too, so if you wanna watch Mark's presentation, you can see that on the YouTube recording. All the minutes, the recording, the presentation will all be available on the IDCC webpage by the end of the week.
Yeah, and another thing that we're gonna talk a little bit about is just, there's a lot of work that's done. Animas and others and the staff really follow the legislative session carefully. Maybe there's some documents, maybe there's some language, maybe there's some information that they already prepare that we could be sharing statewide with the roundtables to kind of keep us more apprised of what's going on. We as a roundtable really should not be lobbying on behalf of the roundtable, but each of your organizations, it's fair game. And maybe we can glean some information summaries from, I know they're working really hard. A priority for DNR is the snow measurement information, but there's more than just that. So we want to keep everybody up to speed on what's going on with the legislative session, because your organization may want to write a letter to your representative or agency that's involved in these to try to influence where this legislation goes. So I just wanted to bring that up as well. I'm sorry, Sally, take it away.
All right, we have a lot going on in Pepco right now, but I'll just talk quickly about the budget. Right now, Patrick and I are going to prepare for another Pepco budget for the next grants committee meeting for a $25,000 ask. So that is coming up within the next week and the April grants meeting. Kristen Jesperson with Yambatika couldn't be here today, but I will give her story map update. We have made a subcommittee for the story map. Kristen, myself, Chris Collins, Chuck Whiteman, Alden Vanderbrink, and Ken Vertree. So far, anyone is welcome, and please join. We need all the help we can. We are going to populate the story map. So we're figuring out how to divide and conquer that right now. We have an RFP that went out in February, and the proposals are due here in just a couple of days for the new contractor, for the phase 2 contractor for the story map. After that, I think the week after, we have interviews. And by April 1st, we have a selection, we'll have our selection for the contractor and have them contracted. So after April 1st is when all our real work begins, because then we can kind of find out how the contractor wants to tackle populating the story map. So right now we're kind of looking at our assets, our videos, and things like that. So kind of in a holding pattern, but also thinking forward to how we want to divvy up that work. So please help us out. Field trip planning, we are going to focus on the White River for their July 9th field trip, which is going to be before our roundtable meeting in Meeker at the firehouse. So far, we've got a Yellow Creek visit. Jennifer Wellman with the Nature Conservancy and Sean Wilder are going to be there helping us and showing us all the great work that they've been doing. So we really want to, and Liz is going to help us also, but we really want to give a chance to the White River to show off everything that you guys have been doing, and we're really excited to be there because you guys have been doing so much. Some of the other possibilities, we're probably gonna talk about the return flow study again. Liz has got some ideas of where we can get a good overview, look at that area. But if you have any other ideas, please contact me. Nothing's in stone yet. The agenda is not made, so let me know the best way to show off White River. So, we'll be having lots of emails on that. One thing that Jeff Myers brought up recently is a screening of the Mirasol movie or video that we watched at the C9 Summit. It focuses on the San Luis Valley and, you know, multi-generational ranchers and the problems that they're having, which are very interesting, you know, congruent to hear. So we were thinking, we reached out to the Mirasol, filmmakers, and you can screen those movies. You're thinking maybe either before a roundtable event, sometime in the fall, or maybe even doing it, on an off month. So a different event, maybe in Steamboat or Craig, or probably Craig, so we could have one screening and then a discussion afterwards, which is really helpful, I think. Not just to watch the movie, but to discuss as a roundtable together, what we just watched. So like we did at the C9. We're gonna be talking about that and emails to be following for that. We found out today, this morning, we have our new infographics for the Yampa White Green, and let me show you those.
This is important. We need you to, take a good look at this and get the comments back
Let me find it, there.
right away.
Okay. And these will also go out in email tomorrow, so if you can't see these, look at these a lot. We want your input on what you think we need, what you like, what you don't like. Have kind of a quick turnaround. They want our feedback by Monday, so, please take a look at this and see if you what you like. So here, this one is more, about Colorado in general. It has a little blurb about the Yampa White Green on the right, but if we go down, this one is the one that focuses on our basin. And so at the C9, we were asked to give our input. Steve Meyer did quite a bit of this, and just really what's most important to our basins. I think there were 10 different things that we thought about and did in order. Top of our list was, you know, lack of storage, our different concerns, agriculture, recreation. And so what we're asking is, are our concerns reflected in this infographic? So, please give us your feedback. Some of the things that we talked about in the PEPO meeting, or, it talks about, a free-flowing river. So what does that mean here? Why is that a concern? Is it because of our storage issues and our hydrograph? So maybe our issues of not having storage and our seasonality of the flow aren't exactly shown in this infographic. So if there's something that you can specifically say, hey, I want to see this, I want this to be changed, let me know soon. Because this is gonna go into print pretty soon. And this will be emailed to you. So you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Sally. I think this is great. And I didn't see closely enough in the previous slide, but do you have the Yampa White Green Basin's contribution to the flow at Lee's Ferry on an annual basis anywhere on this infographic?
That was one of the things we talked about, Andy, was trying to put into perspective. Here in the room, we have a couple of maps that we want to share with the membership. It'll be a gift from the PEPL committee to the membership here. And it does, yeah, Sally's holding it up right now. You can't quite see it. It's the one that's in the, if you've seen our canopy, it's the one that covers one of the two walls. But, you know, to try to put into perspective the very significant water contribution that Northwest Colorado makes to the Colorado River flows.
So Patrick noticed at the top, it says 60 inches, but maybe what is that in a percentage of what, how much the whole state gets or something like that, you know, just, it's a large amount. So, just trying to convey our concerns. So really just want your, feedback from that.
Could you, if you do use that, would you just quantify what the historical average, what years those are in here?
We haven't gotten that far yet.
That's okay.
But yeah, but we'll take it. But
I'm confusing you because I've got two different things that we're discussing. The maps, we're gonna come back to in a minute. She's talking about the infographic.
And Andy just said, did you put on there this number, right?
yeah, it's
Yeah.
not on the infographic yet,
Right,
but
so
we're
I
thinking
just
it could be something that,
Yeah,
Put
but
the
it's
years on it if you use
Yeah,
it.
something that we can comment and see if that's accepted as a.
And this, I think this is the old map. It's the new map that CWCB or somebody's provided has the high and low.
Yeah.
And over the last couple of years, right?
I think the one that-
we're down to 1.2 million acre feet, not to 1.5 on this graph, so.
And this is
That's the one they use on the
2011, I think is the one that you have now.
Some of that stuff might be better suited for some of our Colorado River infographics as well. And just a reminder that the audience for this particular infographic is like the general public, so trying to sort of walk that line of being overly technical and also provide all the important information.
So you're gonna get an email on just the infographic, and that's one that you wanna try to respond to. If you like it, great. If you like it, if you have some ideas, please share them. The other topic is the maps that you have. Chuck Whiteman did the map of Northwest Colorado that you see. You know, we worked on that in the PEPAL committee, and it's on our web page. It's the map of our area. What I'd like to do, what PEPAL wants to do, is make a copy of this for you, and we're gonna laminate it. What I wanna know is, how big one do you want? I mean, we could do 8.5 by 11, and the front page will be the front page of the map, and the other one would be the snake chart. But I have one at home that's a little bigger than the Colorado state flag. So what do you want? Because we'll get you what you want or what you think you can use. If it's something that you wanna hang on your wall, put in your office, whatever you wanna do with it, but just, you're gonna get an email on this, and we want you to respond, what do you want? Because we're gonna go order it, get it printed and get it laminated and bring it back to you. It's a gift, but you should help us with like, how big of a gift do you want?
I would like one the size of the American flag.
Yeah. It's in my, that's the one that's in my living room.
yeah,
Lucky white.
it is.
I want to set a place now.
I like placemat, placemat size.
Yeah, placemat.
I get it. And
Whatever size you wanted, that's the size we're gonna make for you. So that's just, PEPAL trying to do something that says, thank you for being a roundtable member, and don't forget that you can say something about this.
Yeah, but we would like to use these, you know, for our advertisements and things like that. So, yeah, so we just want to make them represented.
Yeah.
What
else do you have, Sally? Anything?
Pardon me?
Do you have anything else?
Yep, PEPAL meeting in Silverthorne, May 2nd.
Statewide.
Statewide, yeah. Gonna send out another email shortly about canopy signups. We really want everybody to sign up to use a canopy or a table at an event. I've got a ton of events listed down later. All of them are fair game. But please, if people don't want to see me, you get paid $50. And it's actually pretty fun. You get to meet a lot of people. We spend a lot of money on these canopies, and we just really want to get our message out. So please sign up, call me, send me an email. I'll make sure you get all your, everything you need. We've got some things to give away now. Bought some temporary tattoos. They say, keep it clean, you have white, green. And these will be for giveaways for the kids at the youth fest and things like that. we spent $150 on them and got like 1,100 of them. So they're, you know, not big plastic things we can give out, and it's free advertising on them. So, just a way to give something out. We have a lot of things from we picked up from the Colorado Water Conservation Board to give out, Headwaters magazines, and we've got a lot of things to give out. So if you have a canopy, let me, you want to take it out, let me know, I'll get those things to you. Also, something to think about, there's some fees at some events, so just think ahead. And we can get those fees taken care of those for you. Newspaper articles, Steve wrote our last one on the different grants we've given out recently, published in the Pilot and Red Daily Press, also sent it to the Meeker Times, I believe.
With all these
and-
events coming up.
Yep, and so think about more newspaper articles. I think we've got a couple in the queue, so. But if you have an idea for an article, let me know.
Yeah.
And it's a good way for you to personally kind of convey what you're feeling about, because no one really wants to write these articles. So if you have something you're passionate about, let me know. It's true.
This is our opportunity to vent, right?
Well, if you have something that's important, we're thinking maybe the, return flow study.
Yeah,
for the
return
next
flow
article.
study, you know, we have tons of interesting things that we can talk about.
At the
Just
end
gotta
of
write
the
it down.
season, people start down, so. So there's always will take an article, and sometimes people forget to write articles, so it's nice to have something that we can just plug into. Like Rebecca said, State of the Rivers are coming up, but I'll let you go through these yourself for the upcoming events. We've got all these events are on the website also, all the way through the fall. And let's see, for partner updates, I reached out to our partners, and Yamatika got back to me with their update. Really, they're in full swing, visiting a lot of schools right now. Yamatika staff were trained in level one avalanche and snow science, which is really exciting, I think, especially in Steamboat. The Yampa Youth Water Festival is on October 1st this year, and then right before that, we have the Fall Fest on the 28th of September. And so another exciting thing Yamatika is doing is the Rocky Mountain Youth for Yampa Valley Science School has always been a huge staple in Steamboat for many years. And now they are including Craig for the sixth graders, so that's pretty exciting. One West. And as far as the story map we talked about, still waiting on contractor selection. And Yamatika is still awaiting word on its 25 through 27 CWCB grant for water education. They didn't have a whole lot to share, and they will have a whole lot more, and also probably maybe in a newspaper article also on some of Yamatika's successes lately. They've been really doing a lot of work coming out west and really hitting a lot of kids, 5,000. So, looks like Michelle's here. What else would you like to add, Michelle? What did I forget?
Yeah, I can definitely chime in with some details, just regarding our programming. I'm definitely so busy with that, but just a few highlights, including really some awesome snowpack and snow science lessons, avalanche safety lessons, a new albedo effect lesson about the snowpack, and snow water equivalency in that snowpack. So some cool stuff with older kids. We did a full blown field trip with the entire Sirocco Middle School and kind of did all that, and then looking into developing kind of that high school curriculum and more of that climate literacy work, which is exciting and new. Yeah, just let's see, you touched on mainly everything, those dates for sure. Looking for, help with the Fall Fest, as far as Basin Roundtable participants go, and possibly also adding a few more participants for the water festival. So if anyone's interested in helping to teach lessons to 5th graders and beyond, reach out to Yampatika. And thank you so much.
Right, so anything else?
That's it for Peppo. I don't see any other comments on
Yeah, any questions or comments? Do I see your hand up? Sure.
that. Was Michelle. She already.
She already, so your hand's just over. Well, we have a quick announcement from Robert Sakata. Robert, what do you have to share tonight?
Thanks, Ken. Just real quickly, it's not really water related, but it's, as most of you know, my two passions are water and the other one is rural behavioral health. There's going to be several events in your area, neck of the woods. I think on Monday, March 17th, in Craig, or Monday, March 17th will be in Steamboat, the film showing of the film Legacy, and then a discussion following about rural behavioral health. And then in Craig and Meeker and the next day, and then on March 19th, a special showing in Carbondale because of the events that have been going there. In the chat, I'll put the links if you want to share that with everybody. We welcome everybody's attendance. And then finally, just wanted to end and say thanks so much to Jackie Brown. I really appreciated being able to serve with her on the CWCB, and always relished her comments and thoughtfulness, and especially the last meeting, our 8 minutes. I need 8 minutes of your time really was really a special comment, and I really appreciated that. So thanks, Ken.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks for being here. You're a brave man. He stays all the way to the end of these meetings. You can see that we have a series of announcements. We've gone over those several times now. Our next meeting will be here in Craig on May 14th. Anything else? Online. All right.
Cheers, all.
To adjourn 4 minutes early. Thank you,
Nice
everybody.
job, Ken.
Adjourned.
Yeah. No, I'm like. Don't worry.